Constellation, Last Stand Media's conversational podcast, is brought to you by you. If you want to learn how to support our podcast network, head to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Constellation, Last Stand Media's conversational podcast. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined, as always, by my brother, Dagan Moriarty. Dagan, how are you today, my friend?
This is so exciting. You know what's exciting about doing Constellation in its early iterations is that we still get new collections, combinations of people. We haven't had this combo yet, if I'm not mistaken.
First time.
Very exciting. Very excited.
Yeah, it is exciting. I was texting Micah to bring me a water. I haven't sent it yet because I accidentally wrote, "Can you please send me a water?" And I can't do that because I don't know what that means, you know, unless we had like some sort of like butler,
like a dummy waiter.
Right. I love dummy waiters.
Cool.
I love dummy waiters.
It reminds me so much of the Northeast, especially.
Definitely.
That's Gene Park, the Washington Post, the voice you hear. How are you today, my friend? Good to see you.
Good morning. Feeling good. This morning I did my third appearance on NPR. In the past like month and a half. They're loving me over there.
So
unfortunately, my building had a fire alarm go off. So half the segment, it was an hour-long segment. Half the segment I was just muted because the fire alarm just kept going. So, and it was a fun discussion. It was, of course, about Zelda and the release of it, and the news this morning, as of Wednesday, that it sold 10 million copies in
crazy
days, which is
crazy. Unbelievable. And so great for gaming to have something people can gather around. Mm-hmm. So I think it's cool. And it's great that like the public is talking about it and it's not negative. It's not like, remember Fox's Mass Effect coverage and all that kind of stuff from back in the day when
good point.
It's cool to have something people can celebrate that you can't possibly glean controversy out of it. It's joy and fun. Which is cool.
The NPR segment was interesting because they had a bunch of callers from all over the United States, and there were a lot of like you can hear their voices. There were a lot of older folks, and they were talking about how they were playing the game with their children or their grandchildren, or how it was like the perfect Mother's Day to spend time just playing Tears of the Kingdom. It was actually quite moving.
Nerds,
the kind of I know, the kind of breadth that you don't really hear, the kind of diversity of voices that you don't really hear in video games coverage these days. You should
do a story on Washington Post. You can take this one called Breath of the Wild. And it's about how Zelda has brought in all sorts of moms and grandmas. You know what's interesting about that is I've always noticed, and this is just anecdotal, of course, but the few older people I've encountered or know in my life who played video games back in the day or played at one time all played Zelda, like the original one. Mm-hmm. And they all have this story of making maps and doing all these things. There's something maybe about that series that speaks to the older gamer or the older potential gamer. It reminds me of like our Uncle John. He would tell us stories about how he would call like the Nintendo Power hotline and shit like that and do it. And there's something like generationally interesting about that game that brings a lot of mystery, but it's funny how at 10 million, that must be pretty close to what Ocarina of Time sold cumulatively on N64, which is pretty crazy. And that was considered a revolutionary game in and of itself. So I'm glad everyone's enjoying it. And Dustin Furman, executive producer, you are here. I guess the Nintendo talk is germane because you are 3/4 of our new Nintendo podcast Punching Up, which has been met with rave reviews. And I must say, Dustin, people have really been complimenting your ability to host the show, which is great. Hosting a show is a hard thing to do. I don't think people... I'm not like patting myself on the back, but I think some people are like, what is he looking at? What is he doing? What is he writing? Why is he always writing on his fucking pad? You know, and I'm like, I'm trying to, someone's got to keep it together. You know,
sure.
I wish I could hang on to this show and someone else can do it. I especially wish that was Sacred Symbols. I wish someone else would just come in and host it so I could just dick around and then leave. Like I'm done. Anyway, Dustin, congratulations. How are you today, my friend? Thank you, babe.
Thank you. It's been awesome hearing the feedback. It's been super cool. The thing about hosting that I was thinking about, because I was seeing the good feedback, and that was one of those things that I felt confident in my ability, but there's always that worry with episode 1. You know, you got to have that good first impression. Someone hears episode 1, they don't like it, they're not coming back for weeks, maybe months or ever. And so that was a big worry for me. That was like, what if I suck? But hosting, I don't know, Colin, maybe you agree with this, is that a big part of hosting isn't about what you say or do during the podcast, but what you decide not to do. For me, it was a matter of, okay, I want to make sure we flow through these things. What do we have time for? Maybe we're going to shorten this part up a little bit. Maybe we're going to, it's a lot of mental gymnastics. And then you also are trying to keep things flowing smoothly at the same time while you're debating a million different options of what directions to go in. So it's been really cool. Busy week here at Last Stand. I feel like we're on fire right now. And we're doing great. I'm not trying to pat ourselves on the back, but it's been an awesome week. And Sony just presented us with a gift of a PlayStation showcase next week. So we're just totally going to be rocking for a while.
It's the first showcase since September of 2021.
21, yeah.
How is that even possible?
Wow.
That we haven't had any PlayStation showcases since then. There are no games to talk about. That's what I was saying on Discord was, everyone's like, you excited about, a few people are asking me about, I'm like, honestly, I'm excited as the CEO of this business because I think we're on the verge of having the biggest episode of Sacred Symbols ever. I mean, the pent up energy in PlayStation right now is
ready to bust.
It's about to bust all over the place.
Ooh.
Oh. All right, my friends, we're here. We'll leave that for Sacred Symbols, which we record soon, and that will be up soon. And yeah, the Ken Levine episode is up now. People are.
Oh,
I sent the Ken Levine episode I texted it to Neil Druckmann, and I said, "This could be us, but you're fronting." And then I just said, I literally just sent him the link. So I'm waiting on a response from him. But yeah, I'm because he's a huge fan of Ken Levine as well. So. Super amped to have him I talked to him for over 2 hours, but we cut out quite a bit of stuff that we thought might spoil Judas and do some other things. So, it's an interesting, I think it's like talking to JD Salinger, basically. That's what I said on the show because he doesn't talk to anyone.
Right.
In fact, he goes into why he became reclusive. And one of the interesting things about it that he says is he's like, I started to believe my own hype. I would go and expect people to recognize me, and then you just get disappointed when people don't recognize you. And he goes through all of this, and it's very interesting.
Cool, very honest.
Yeah, so
cool.
I really appreciated his candor, and he's an auteur. I think he's pretty much on Kojima's level. I think there's a Miyamoto style level. Yeah, there you go. And Dagan sticker on his mic as well.
I love
you guys are both repping.
Red's awesome.
You haven't played Death Stranding, right, Dig?
Haven't even played the first one yet. Nope.
Oh my goodness.
No.
Oh my god.
I know.
It's something.
Oh my goodness.
It's certainly something.
What we got to do is Death Stranding 2 will probably be 2020. You would want to say 2024, but it'll probably be 2025. 2024 would be reasonable. The first one came out in 2019, but who the hell knows? But in the prelude to that, we'll have to play it because I played it on PS4. I want to play it on PS5 at 60 frames and
it's gorgeous.
Do all of that. And yeah, I can't. So when we'll convene whatever combination of people we want for an episode, and hopefully Dagan will be able to do it at that time because
that'll be cool.
I don't want to get too crazy, but like through the lens of history, Death Stranding might be his best game. It's not quite as prescient as Metal Gear Solid 2 was in terms of Metal Gear Solid 2 basically just predicting the future, but it kind of did. In fact, it was so on point, I think, that he said he had to rewrite the sequel, right? Because it was like too sad, too fucked up. Anyway, as I don't know how we got on Kojima, God bless him. My friends, Gene, Dustin, Dagan, good to see you again. And let's get into our topics this week. Dagan, I want to begin with you, actually.
Sure.
Your topic here, you want to talk about advertising, and I think this is very interesting. And you and I have a shared love of Mad Men, which we gush over and are completely obsessed with. And it was through that I really started to look at advertising as something deeper than what it was. And so I really love this idea of you bringing this up and talking about it. So what's on your mind, my friend?
Cool. Thank you. I mean, there's a lot to say. And let me just start by saying, when I kick it over to you guys, well, you guys feel free to take it in whatever direction you want to. But this is a topic I've been fascinated with since I was a kid. And I thought I was fascinated with advertising in general before Mad Men. Mad Men made my fandom of advertising, or my obsession over advertising, even stronger, which is insane to think about. But what kicked it up insofar as wanting to talk about it with you guys today. So I was grocery shopping a few days ago, and I'm walking down the aisle, and I'm in the beverage aisle, and I see the Liquid Death, the canned water. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, isn't it so interesting how advertising has evolved? Turn down the very next aisle, shopping for coffee. There's Death Wish coffee with the skull and crossbones, the Jolly Roger. And I'm like, I just had the thought of this would have never existed in the supermarket aisle 40 years ago. You couldn't sell something that you had to consume that was meant for consumption with death in it. And isn't it kind of crazy how advertising has changed and what appeals to people during different eras? And then again, when I kick it over to you guys, you talk about however you want, maybe TV commercials you grew up with that you're nostalgic about. Maybe you want to talk about our favorite podcasters and YouTubers shilling products online now, how it's changed in the modern age for the web. But my fascination, I think the foundation of my fascination with advertising is this. It's the very idea of what it comes down to, which is the act of using a collection of all these elements, right? Art, design, sound, science, psychology, invoking our emotional response in order to sell us something. It's basically a very coordinated manipulation in order to get us to buy stuff. That's what advertising is. And it dates back to even before television or print. You had radio, which is still a thing, and advertising online, like I said. We're all kind of, in a way, puppets on a string. Even the people on Madison Avenue are, we're all kind of beholden to this thing called advertising, consumption, especially in a capitalistic society, right? I'm very aware of it, which you think would make me kind of leery or resentful. It's like, I don't want to be the marionette on the puppet strings. I don't want to be the Pinocchio. But in some way, I have to honestly say, I have a very bipolar relationship with the idea of advertising, because I know it's an industry driven by the almighty dollar, right? The bottom line. And it's designed to sell us a bill of goods. But I think it's awesome. And I think everything that goes into it, the magic and the money and how important it is in our society and, globally, not just in the Western world anymore. I'm obviously evidently fascinated with it. And I find the evolution of advertising over the decades, again, the evolution of this industry to be super interesting. It used to be a pretty straightforward thing. If you go back and look at, let's say, early TV commercials in the 50s and 60s, it was basically pretty straightforward formula of extolling the virtues of a product, right? Tastes great, low sugar, your family will love it, high quality, better than all the other leading brands, whatever. It was like you had your 30 seconds to get in and get out and basically sell your product in a straightforward way. Then at some point, probably in the 80s, it became all about humor, to the point now, which stuck. It's almost like the word cool, or like jeans with ripped holes in the knees. Like once that hit, it never went away again. Once humor and advertising hit, it became so important that now if you see a straightforward ad on television, or you hear a radio spot that seems sort of bland or, not humorous in any way, you almost suspect it's being ironic, because you're like, why isn't this funny? And, that, of course, came to a head, especially with the really high dollar Madison Avenue Super Bowl spots and all that kind of thing. But then the humor started to go into this territory of, we could basically sell things that say it's going to kill you, even though obviously it's just coffee. Obviously it's just water. It's so interesting what people are ready to accept just based on the time. And I think, partially seeing that big product on the supermarket aisle is one reason that people are ready to buy in. They basically see it and say, okay, I guess if this is ready for mainstream consumption, then I'm in too, that type of deal. So I want to hand it over to you guys. I remember in the 70s, because I'm old enough to remember really straightforward advertising where it was basically they would sell a product with warmth. They would sell a product with relatability. They would sell a product with something that looked like it was good for your family, maybe a really catchy jingle, really attractive people selling a bill of goods, whatever. And then it became, I remember in the 80s with things like Where's the Beef and stuff.
I was literally just thinking about that as you said that.
It's iconic.
I was like, where's the beef? This is a totally conversation about where's the beef.
The companies, the corporations, and the advertising agencies sort of clung onto this thing of selling things with humor, selling things by making people laugh. And now I feel like it's an extension of that, where it seems like almost any publicity is good publicity. In other words, any idea, as long as it stays with you, you could even be controversial on purpose. As long as somebody remembers that, whether it's this latest beer controversy or something like Liquid Death, as long as it kind of plants a seed in your mind and stays there, I think that's the philosophy now. But I said a lot. Let me pass it over to you, Gene. We'll go to you first on this as I pass the baton. How do you want to take this, and also maybe shout out a couple of things that you grew up with that stuck with you over these years, that's really stuck and planted that seed and resonated.
Go on, Gene.
Yeah, Dagan.
Gene's thinking about Dagan's seed now.
I know. I'm just thinking about nut now. It's just like, I guess we make a pretty good
selling it with
controversy because it's very sticky. It's sticky in the brain too.
And now I'm thinking about Chris Chan.
Oh God! It all inevitably goes back to Chris Chan.
I know it does.
Yeah.
Anyway, go on. I'm sorry.
I'm about a generation younger than Dagan, so I definitely grew up in the 80s when all that humor, when Where's the Beef, Where's the Beef's impact. So for those who don't know, there was a Wendy's commercial in the 80s, and I forget what year, but this was something I learned in college too during my media classes, where they were there's advertising before Where's the Beef, and then there's advertising after the Wendy's commercial, where there's a little old lady looking at other burgers and just yelling over and over again, "Where's the beef? Where's the beef?" Because Wendy's would have thicker, bigger, juicier, square beef patties versus McDonald's very paper thin, and they're still very paper thin beef patties over at McDonald's. So when I do look at advertising from the 1950s and 1960s, I look at it through the lens of like I would be playing a Fallout game, where it almost feels very like foreign and alien to me. It just feels like a completely different time and era, and it's quite humble. When I do see an advertisement that just talks about a product these days, I'm like, oh, that was nice and refreshing. Like it's just nice to just be told what it is and what they think it should be, and that's it, right? I don't have to like interpret the psychology of anything. I don't have to like wonder like what Bud Light is trying to tell me with this influencer trying to sell me Bud Light, none of that crap. It was just like, here's a product, here's how it tastes, and this is what it'll do to you. As a newspaper man of more than 20 years now, I've had a very, advertising has kept me alive this entire time. It's paid for my salary. But it's been interesting to see the evolution of advertising and how it got out of media and into what's essentially the company's hands. It's kind of like they're just kind of cutting out the middleman, and there's all this like, well, I'm probably talking about art marketing, which is a completely different thing. I'll tell you what, the advertisements that do stick in my mind, and this is again, this is a video game related podcast network, is the Sega Genesis versus Nintendo ones.
Yes.
They're unforgettable. They kind of inform how I take competitiveness nowadays. I believe that's the true origin of the console war that's going on right now. The fact that Nintendo and Genesis were both very publicly sniping at each other. Much like I guess Coke and Pepsi did, the Pepsi
Coke and Pepsi started it, but
challenge.
Nintendo and Sega might have ran with the baton right after that.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
By the way, I looked up Where's the Beef for you, Gene, just to give you an idea. 1984.
1984.
Okay.
See, I was only 3 years old. I was barely watching, like I was barely like online as a conscious being to process something like that. So it wasn't until actually college where I saw where I first saw Where's the Beef, and I started learning about that. And that was fascinating. But it was definitely the Nintendo Genesis does what Nintendo don't kind of thing.
Definitely. Love it.
And like for me, I work at the Washington Post, right? And our main competitor is through time immemorial has been the New York Times, right? The Washington Post got a win with the whole Nixon Watergate thing, and then the New York Times, lied about the Iraq War and everything like that. So I'm taking shots here, but it goes to my point in that we're in a newspaper war, but we're not talking or advertising like it. I would love if the Washington Post started coming out with advertisements that says like, the New York Times up or something like that. It's just like there's some really cringy, stupid shit where we're just taking really, really pot shots at it, which is why like on my Twitter, I like to call the New York Times Brand X, or like when Phil Harrison, the famous video game executive who just keeps destroying different projects.
Yeah, he just ends up at the companies at their worst moments.
Yeah. Like Google Stadia.
Stadia was the most recent, yeah. But PlayStation, he was a PlayStation during the early PS3 era. It's so funny, man.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah. So then I will like publicly say, New York Times, hire this man as your project manager, your product development manager, president, make him vice president. Fuck it, dude. Just hire him, please. So I think that's fun, and I also think that it's funny, and it would also grab a lot of attention, and I feel like people are still drawn to that, and that's what advertising is. Yes, it's a very cynical ploy to get money and consumerism, but and I never watched Mad Men. I never watched it, but
really,
you'll love it. Dude.
Oh, Gene,
I suspect you'll love it.
Gene,
I probably will love it.
Damn,
because advertising is psychology,
It's so good. It's not really about advertising anyway. That's like just kind of the setting of it, but it's like Battlestar Galactica is not really about space.
Yeah.
Dagan and I were saying that over and over again. It's kind of like Mad Men. It just happens to be taking place around advertising. Yeah. But it's so good, dude. If you watch the first episode and you don't love it, I'll give you $50. How's that? 50 fucking smackaroos.
I'm doing that tonight. I'm going to check it out tonight.
Yeah, check it out.
I think you're gonna like it.
Yeah. But I mean, I think part of the reason why it's because it's about advertising, and it's like, okay, well, I live in that world. Another story is when I was at the college paper in Cal State Fullerton, I was actually the entertainment editor, the features editor of the college paper, and we had the entertainment section was a separate supplement. It was called Full Effect, not my name, not my fucking like. I'm always end up in these products with like shitty names like Launcher and like these really cringy names that I never like wanted to be part of, but like it helps me get the job that I want. But it was a separate supplement, and our advertising folks who were advertising students, it's all students running the paper, the operations and everything. They didn't like the direction that I was taking the paper. Where I was really focusing on student events. I was also doing video games coverage, but I was doing a lot of coverage on student events, and they really didn't like that I was like trying to like do the big Hollywood thing. And then spring break came around, and then I started to do. I basically had like several weeks where I was putting, bikini clad women on the front page. And because the advertising staff were so upset with me, they refused to work with me. So I decided to take matters into my own hands, that I sold advertisements. I was the one selling the advertisements for our product. So I was going around different bars, like different like shops and everything like that, and I was showing them the bikini clad women, and then they bought in. And
right, hell yeah.
And then I single-handedly, through my editorial coverage and my advertising like campaign, was able to bring the product back to its first like week of profitability actually. And then they came back because they eventually saw my vision, where I was like, I'm focusing on the hot students, and that's what it is. It was psychology. Like I just put beautiful women on the cover, and like we got a huge readership. Advertisers wanted to buy in, and that's kind of like where I started to really learn. Like, this is pre-social media. This is like in 2002, right? And that's kind of where I kind of took. When I started to work as a social media professional, I used to be the social media editor at the Washington Post. I would approach it in that same way, where it was like, social media isn't tech, it's psychology, and you have to understand how people think and how people want to engage in content, and that's where you start from,
Oh my God, you're gonna love Mad Men. Holy shit!
Yeah, I guess I will. Yeah, I probably will. Yeah, it just completely missed me, and I was just like, I'm too late on this. How many seasons is it?
It's 6 maybe, something like
Six?
that.
Oh, that's short. That's
Say
good.
6.
Okay,
It's an AMC show too, so it's not outrageous. Like,
Yeah.
it's not. I'm watching The Walking Dead actually right now because I had never watched it after like the second or third season. So
Interesting.
I was like, wow, the first season's only 6 episodes. Very nice.
Mhm.
Very, very nice. But then I was looking later. I think they do like 22 episode
Yeah, it gets
seasons. It's like,
bigger.
holy Christ, guys. All right. Getting a little out of control there.
Yeah, it's like the One Piece of zombie media.
Oh my God.
Whatever. It just keeps going and going. You know.
Don't, Gene. Just,
sorry,
I
Dustin.
can't believe you would compare these two properties. It's so offensive. I'm
That's exactly
disgusted.
why I said it.
Dude, you give me 1,000 episodes or something, and I'm like, nope. I mean, that would be like the biggest turn off to me ever. I'd be like, there's just
Probably
no way.
because you're a coward.
I am a coward, but
You
when people
can't
say,
commit.
even with the Star Wars stuff, people obviously keep trying to get me into it. But I'm like, dude, I'm just burying myself intentionally so that I'll never, like, it's over for me. It's
I'm
just
exactly the same way
it is truly well and over.
I'm exactly the same way with Star Wars. Like I actually could not play Star Wars Jedi Survivor because like I'm just not interested in what happens next. I don't give a shit, you know?
Yeah, me too. I'm like, I don't even remember what the fuck that game was about, if I'm being honest with you. I beat it.
Yeah.
It was about a redheaded Jedi, as far as I
it's
remember.
just-
That's
the
literally all I
ginger
remember.
Jedi, you know?
Ginger Jedi.
Yeah.
Can't help it. I can't help but take a swing at Star Wars every day. Everyone's like getting so. I'm gonna get
You find a
strangled
way
out there
to
one day by
incorporate.
someone.
Well,
Dustin,
honestly,
sorry,
I'm with you, Colin.
Gene,
Every
please.
time you talk shit about Star Wars, I'm like, I'm with him. I'm out. I'm gone. This was like the most impactful pop culture story of my lifetime, and I just don't give a fuck anymore.
I
Yeah,
know.
I'm sorry. You know?
We should do an episode of some sort where people can opt in to a conversation that is about how bad it all got and how much of a turnoff it all is. Because I know people don't want to hear about it, like be like, let's talk about Star Wars, and then like it's all negative.
Mhm.
I know that that's not what Star Wars fans want, but there's certainly a group of people that need the catharsis because I can't talk enough about how much I hate it.
Mhm.
Actually, behind the scenes.
And,
I just
they
can't.
relate. A lot of people relate to it.
Yeah, it gets a rise out of me, and I think other people who do relate will like to bathe in that negativity, you know. So-
Dude, like we've done MCU. Dagan and I have done what was it? Iron Man, the Hulk, and Iron Man 2.
Yep.
In probably the last under a year we did those, probably 6 months or so, maybe 8 months. We are already being outpaced by their releases in the MCU. We're further behind
Yeah, it's fast.
than we were when we started.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. It's true.
That's fucking crazy. Anyway,
Yeah.
Dustin, what do you think about this topic? Not Star Wars and MCU, but the advertising.
I will resist turning Dagan's topic into a Mad Men topic wholly, but I gotta say, you're so on point with the Mad Men comparison and how it made me think about advertising in a different way. And it was cool seeing it firsthand because when I was watching Mad Men, which I believe was right after I graduated high school, I wasn't there at the beginning. I was kind of there the last few seasons live, but I love that Mad Men showed a side of advertising of, you know, the biz, but specifically is that the pitch, the ad behind the ad that Don Draper needed to present in order to sell it. It's like a meta level of advertising. I was so obsessed. I remember in my speech class in college, we had to just read a speech aloud in front of the class as part of the things that we did. And so I did the Don Draper carousel speech for the class.
Epic.
And just an absolute, maybe at least top 5 moments, maybe even top 3 for me in that show. But it was during that time also where
Is the lawnmower the top one?
lawnmower, that's probably top 5. I don't know if it's number 1. Dude, podcast episode, top 5 Mad Men moments.
Yeah,
That
we
would
got to
gotta
get
be
Dagan and I
tough.
want to do
Yeah.
Knockback Mad Men. I mean, we have all these delusions of grandeur with that show where we have time to do any of this, but we're like doing all the Final Fantasy games now. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
But
meanwhile, you're only on Iron Man 2.
yeah, I know. Iron
Yeah.
Man 2.
We struggled to
Saw
get
him in
there.
2008 or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, we want to do a season by season Mad Men
Yes.
thing at some point.
Highly
Yeah.
worth.
So during this time, I was doing an internship at a actually it was a virtual, technically a VFX house in Pittsburgh that mainly did different visual effects for places, but they also had a really strong in-house ad team. They're called Animal. And so while I was an intern there, I got to see a lot of behind the scenes and honestly how, even though it was obviously decades difference between Mad Men and when I was interning at this place, I saw a lot of the same types of things where there was an opportunity for a pitch, not even just a job, but to pitch for a job, and seeing people destroy themselves in order to nail the pitch, and seeing the devastation after it didn't happen as well. Where seriously, I remember one week when I was there, it was all hands on deck to get a pitch ready. And everyone was focused on this one thing. And people were staying late. They ordered a masseuse maybe that was a different time. I do remember though, there was one time where they ordered a masseuse to the office because everyone was working crazy.
That's a thing. Yeah.
It was pretty eye-opening. And then of course, in my old video editing job, it wasn't like any kind of Mad Men situation, but there were times where we were making and writing ads for different local companies. And so it's something that's been around me for a long time, and something that you think about it's so easy, like you were saying, Dagan, to just think, oh, this is just someone trying to get $1 off you. They're just trying to sell you the product. They don't care if it's good or bad. They don't care if you need it. And of course, that is true. But I also do see the artisan side of the ad. Not all ads are created equal. There are some that are amazing that I still think about today. I wrote down a few when you were talking because I want to make sure I got these right. And they're all video game ads, but these are iconic ads that I believe it ran on TV, namely the Uncharted 4 ad that has Where Is My Mind by the Pixies playing in the background is totally awesome. I remember seeing that in a movie theater. There's the Halo Believe ad, which I believe was for Halo 3, which is a 10 out of 10 ad. The Gears of War Mad World one.
Yeah, that's
well.
that's on my general list. That's my favorite gaming ad ever.
Yeah, it's amazing. And what's funny too about gaming ads and just advertising in general is that sometimes you can have an amazing ad for a product that sucks. Specifically, a few years ago, there was an ad that I absolutely loved for Fallout 76 that had the song Wouldn't It Be Nice by the Beach Boys in it. Oh, and I thought this ad, and it didn't have any in-game stuff, but it wasn't designed for that. I think it was designed for TV, so it doesn't necessarily need gameplay. It wasn't an E3 thing. It was such a fun ad that showed, hey, come to this world and live out your post-apocalyptic fantasy. It's going to be crazy and fun. And then the game just totally was not even really workable. It wasn't playable. I guess it was kind of playable, but you didn't want to. So it's interesting to see that aspect of it as well. And you think about movie trailers and how those are, an advertisement for you to come see them, and how I've always found the art of, I guess it can be either a game or a movie, but the art of those trailers and how, what do you show? What don't you show? What is the context? The medium is the message in some ways, and how are you going to present that? And so it's always been interesting. And it's weird too, in that, we're talking about the negative side of ads. And there is part of me that as I get older, I get more uneasy about the level of advertising just everywhere. And I mean, we work on screens all day long. And of course, there's ads before all your videos. There's pop-up ads, there's banner ads. And luckily, we can filter some of those out, or you pay for YouTube Premium or something like that. But even now, something that I find so gross, but I get it, is that in my tiny little town, we've been getting these like giant screen ads. There's one less than a mile from my house now. And it just feels so like cyberpunky.
Yes.
So this world where there's just ads and glowing lights everywhere. Even you can't escape it. In a small Western PA town, there's just giant glowing ads everywhere. And I hate that aspect of it. So I also feel the crushing weight of, and I'm not like some kind of big outspoken capitalism hater, but there is that aspect of just sell, present the product before people everywhere possible. And that can be deflating sometimes. You need to get away from all that. I wrote down one other thing that it's kind of a non sequitur to the other things I was saying, but you guys were talking about the Nintendo and Sega battle. We have to mention Blake J. Harris's book, friend of the show, called Console Wars, which is really a book about advertising through and through. You think about how Sega, when I think it's Tom Kalinske became president of Sega of America, they didn't revolutionarily change the products that they had. They just took the product they already had with the Sega Genesis and changed the way people thought about it in relation to Nintendo and made it a mega success and a major contender all through advertising. And that book is amazing because they talk about some of the different rogue tactics they would do where they couldn't get the Sega Genesis on store shelves in Walmarts. So they would put up, like they would take a small town where some guy at Walmart that managed that stuff, and they would put up banner ads, say, hey, check out Sega Genesis, check it out. They would do pop-up stores right by a Walmart and specifically not sell the Genesis, knowing that people would come play it, think it's awesome, and then go to Walmart and ask to buy one. And they'd say, sorry, we don't have it.
So
and
smart.
It fucking worked. It was crazy. And this is during a time, too, where Nintendo was not playing any games, where if they didn't like what you were doing, if you were giving too much shelf space to a competitor, they'd say, sorry, we're not sending you any more shit. We don't need you. You know, the most ballsy. So if you are interested specifically in gaming and advertising, that book is so incredible to see how that story completely changed around Sega and how they completely fucked themselves later on with the consoles that came after. So yeah, advertising is, it's like anything else, positives, negatives, but I always think that the intersection of art and commerce in this very specific way is cool and bad at the same time.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah, definitely.
When you were talking about your town, Dustin, I appreciate Hawaii, Honolulu especially. There are laws where there are no like billboards, no big advertisements because the lawmakers there are prioritizing the nature and beauty of Hawaii, which, to be fair, is the product of Hawaii.
Tourism.
Absolutely.
It's the tourism. Yeah, so it's like we can't have any other advertisements that get in the way of advertising the actual product, which is the natural beauty and culture of Hawaii. So
yeah. Dude, my parents were there last year and they still talk about how beautiful it was. I'm gonna have to ask them about that and be like, did you notice that you weren't being bombarded with ads constantly everywhere? You know, like
yeah,
that's cool.
I've been writing down so many notes here as you guys have been talking because there's so much to say, but I'll go relatively quickly. I think I haven't thought about this until I've gotten older, but I've been exposed, much like Gene, to ads through my professional life a great deal. But what's interesting about it is that where I worked at IGN for all those years, there's such controversy around their ads and ad campaigns and all of this. And I've always said to people, it is my honest to God, listen, people, I love IGN personally as for what they did to me and the people that I worked there with, that I'm still friendly with. I have no love for the modern brand. I don't think it's the same at all, but they're trucking on. But you know that I take the piss out of games media whenever I can. And I've always told people there was nothing untoward going on at IGN with advertising. There really wasn't. We didn't know what the fuck was going on in editorial at all. There really was, and Gene will know this term, the Chinese wall, where editorial is kind of put away and cordoned off from the rest of the company's function. So like you don't know what anyone else is doing by nature. They're on the other side of the building. They have meetings with and then they have liaisons. Like Brian Altano is one of the guys that would go between the two. He knew what was going on there. He'd come in here and like produce something because he was kind of the guy with the knowledge, but we didn't know. So when I see like my Mass Effect 3 ad or my Mass Effect 3 review surrounded by a Mass Effect 3 ad, that's a surprise to me when that goes live too, right? And everyone thinks that I gave it a 9 because I was bought off, but really these two things just happened in silos. So I wanted to reiterate that because I'm sure some people are thinking about that. And as the CEO of this business and kind of the person who deals with so let me back up. In Last Stand, we have a firm that represents us. They're called Studio 71 for anyone that's curious. And they're what you used to call a multi-channel network or an MCN, but that's not really the way they function anymore. In fact, while lots of MCNs have failed, Studio 71 has survived because they were wise to get into podcasts and do all that kind of stuff. So they're kind of like a podcast talent ad nexus thing. And they've been really good to us. I've been with them since 2017 when we first started selling ads. And because the original Colin's Last Stand was promised as ad free. I never sold ads on that, even though I could have. I didn't. Even on YouTube, we didn't turn ads on, which ended up algorithmically hurting the channel, which I never really made the connection to until later. But nonetheless, I really feel like I've learned a great deal about advertising through this relationship that we've had with them. And for people that don't know, like we get, and why would you know this? We get emails from our reps saying these guys are interested in sponsoring this show, or what do you think? And sometimes it's a yes, and sometimes it's a no. Most of the time it's a yes. Sometimes when it's a yes, you never hear back again because these are campaigns that are in motion. Sometimes it's no, like I think we turned down like erectile dysfunction pills or something like that.
Yeah.
Not because and this feeds into something else that I was going to talk about, which is that I love writing the ads. I write all of our ads, except for the ones that Dustin and Maddie read. I write all my ads and I write Micah's because I want to keep her work to a minimum. She has other things to deal with. She could write her own ad. She's very capable of doing that. But I like being funny with that kind of stuff. So with ED, originally I was like, this would be hysterical. But my whole argument was like, I don't think this really makes sense for our show. It's not that I'm like embarrassed by the product. I don't know how I'm going to make this work, So sometimes we say no, but oftentimes we say yes. And we've had some advertisers that have been with the show since really the beginning, and you hear them over and over again. People that like basically love the show and that get good business from us, like BetterHelp and Feels and so on and so forth.
That's cool.
And it's worth noting that though every ad we do could be controversial to someone, some brand has done wrong to someone at some point. I totally get it. And, you hear those stories. I don't just take the money. First of all, the advertising money that we get is becoming more and more substantial, which is awesome. Like 20 to 40% of our monthly, it would be 20 to 40% of our Patreon per month, which is huge amount of extra money to do new shows and pay more people and do all of that. But we don't need it. So it's all additive, and I do believe in the products or the intent behind the products that we do. Like I really do. Like Athletic Greens, I've used Athletic Greens. It's like really high quality. Liquid IV, which is running campaigns down Sacred Symbols. Micah fucking loves that shit. I really believe
Mac
in
Weldon's, dude.
Mac Weldon, yeah.
Mackie Schmackies.
I live in Mac Weldon. I live in Mac Weldon clothes for real. Like I really love Manscaped stuff. Like so when they do all this, it's an interesting confluence. And the one thing that I don't do, even though this costs us easily six figures in revenue per year, which is endemic ads. Like we just don't do them. And what that means in the world of advertising, there's called endemic advertising and non-endemic advertising, and typically in terms of media advertising. So if you worked at a motorsports magazine, an endemic ad would be for brake pads.
Right.
A non-endemic ad would be for Tide. If you worked at Home and Garden, a Lowe's ad would be an endemic ad, but a Chick-fil-A ad might not be, or whatever the case might be. For us, it's games. And Sacred Symbols' first few episodes did have an endemic ad because I went to East Asia Soft and sold it myself to them. And after that, we were like, when we started really distancing ourselves from PR, which was half out of necessity and half because we just didn't want to do it anymore. It kind of just was perfect marriage of those things. I just said we should just not take the endemic ads at all. So there were possibilities for us to run Last of Us ads, and both for the game and the HBO show, to promote various game associated podcasts, to do all this, and we turn all those down. So it's important for people to know that that's like the real deal. Like we're really putting our money where our mouth is. But as far as just a few other things I wanted to bring up before we move on, I personally love the evolution, and everyone touched on this in their own way, but on the evolution of the seriousness of the ad to the funniness of the ad. It is very weird to turn on a TV like a game now, an NFL game or an NBA playoff game or whatever, and see serious ads. But back in the day, all the ads were serious.
Yeah.
And what I found was that funny advertising began in print. And I've been reading a little bit about this, not, apropos of nothing, not because of the show, but just seeing it. There was these ads going around. I don't know if you guys saw them, of this couch that was being sold in the 70s. That was this deep couch where you can move it around almost like Tetris pieces. And the entire campaign was about how, like, we can't tell you what you're going to do on this thing. Who knows what might happen on this thing. And it was like very tongue in cheek. And I was like, yeah, this is the prelude of what would come to TV later. And I just thought you guys would find this funny too, is that and I brought this up in the past, is that I mute commercials when I watch TV. I don't watch TV anymore at all. In fact, the last TV show, like linear TV show I watched live was Mad Men's final episode, which I think was in 2014 or 2015.
Wow.
Something like that. I watch sports.
Something like that.
I watch a lot of live sports and sometimes the news, but I always mute the TV. I picked this up from my best childhood friend, Mike Pope's dad, Skip. Mm-hmm. I used to watch Jets games with him because no one in my family cared about the Jets. So I'd go over to his house when I was a kid and watch Jets games with him, and in high school and even in college when I was home or whatever. And he would the TV would go off, the scoreboard would come up. They'd be kicking it out to break, and he would just mute it without saying anything. And then when the game would come back, he would mute it and would be back in. And I still do that to this day when I watch TV, like to a T. I totally picked it up from him. And on that note, I just wanted to say that I am disappointed in the nexus of sports and advertising becoming more and more prominent. Of course, NASCAR and stuff like that has always been built around that, but seeing advertisements on NHL players' helmets, seeing, NBA jerseys have logos on them, it's getting a little much. And I hope we kind of stave that off, because if you look at, and I was telling Micah this, if you look at European hockey, for instance, like European professional hockey, the goalies have ads on their gear. Mm-hmm. Like the goalies will have an ad on their blocker, on their pads, on their stick. It's fucking stupid. And I think it's kind of goofy when you wear like I don't know, some specific soccer team in England, like Manchester United or whatever. I'm pretty sure your jersey is a massive logo of some other company. That's the jersey. That's really weird. And that's where we got that kind. Now that's more necessary in games like soccer because there are fewer ad breaks in soccer and there are fewer ways to squeeze money out of the game, which is one of the things that people like about it, is that you can't cut the commercial. You kind of have to just go with it. But I also think it's important to realize that at the end of the day, it's funny to think about this. It's kind of fucked up about how central it all is. Advertising is paying player salaries in the NFL. When you really think about it, they could play to empty stadiums and it wouldn't matter. It's all about the TV deals. And then when that money comes in from the TV deals, then those companies are selling ads to make that money back. So that is what it is all driven by. And so to see it kind of leak out in a NASCAR way is not a huge surprise, but I hope they can keep it at bay. But I don't think a lot of people realize that, for instance, baseball. I mean, I watch baseball highlights. There's fucking no one in the building at these games, like no one there. And it doesn't matter because it is ads that the game is built around. And it's becoming especially pernicious with gambling, which is just, has been widely legalized. And therefore it's crazy as being a sports watcher for 30 years of my life, more than that, really, that it's just, wow, man, it's just so much. Here's the over under. Here's the fucking this. Here's the book here. That's like, wow, it's really changing again. So those are my thoughts on advertising. And then just a few ones that we have to call out. Dig, the egg in the pan commercial.
Oh my goodness. Your brain on drugs?
Yeah. Do you remember that one, Gene? This is your brain on drugs?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That unforgettable.
Yeah. That's a really iconic
never
one.
Worked on me.
Me neither. In fact, what I always thought was, I was like, wow, that looks, I love over easy eggs and sunny side up eggs.
Cartoon eggs. Give me a cartoon.
Colin, I'm glad you mentioned about muting commercials. You brought me back. This is an important story. My grandmother raised me when I was a kid, right? Because my mom and dad were both working, and she's the reason why I'm Christian. And I would always watch Sesame Street. And every time the commercials came on, or anytime I watch any kind of TV, she would turn the TV off. And I'll be like, why is that? And she's like, because that's where the devil gets you. That's temptation. That's temptation.
Wow.
Interesting.
And you need to be away from that.
Interesting.
I was like, oh, thanks, Grandma. God bless you.
And meanwhile, it's like CBS or Sesame Street is brought to you by PBS.
Yeah.
and people like you. And then it's just like, that's the devil.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, she's not, in some ways, she's not. I don't want to say she's totally like wrong.
She's not wrong.
But
she's not wrong.
There's this idea, it is kind of weird when you think about, especially ads for kids. I understand you got to get them excited about the toys, but it's constantly, here's a reminder of the things you don't have, most likely, until you go and get it and then you see an ad or something like that. But it is funny now. And Colin, you're talking about muting the ads. And I think we've had this conversation on Sacred when we were talking about YouTube Premium, is just my tolerance for ads on anything when it's a video ad or something is basically totally gone. And anytime that I'm on YouTube, and so one example is that I have YouTube on my TV, but sometimes I want to look up an instructional video on how to do something, but I don't want it to be in my algorithm because I don't need 30 million videos about how to fix my toilet or something. So I go to the no profile, which doesn't have YouTube Premium on it. And when I see those ads, it infuriates me. And I can't imagine. I know YouTube Premium is probably a little more pricey than it should be. I can't imagine not having it anymore.
Oh
just
my
because
God. Never.
No, never again.
And some people, I get it. Some people don't watch YouTube like we do. But for me, I watch more YouTube than Netflix. I watch more than Hulu.
Me too.
I'm always in the morning. I'll sit down with a coffee, pull up YouTube. I'll watch a video or two, see what's interesting. At nighttime, between episodes of One Piece with Holly, we're putting on Company Man. And we've had a whole thing about YouTube on the show. But the thought of even having ads in those now, I mean, just think about your time. If you're really watching YouTube and you're seeing, depending on how long the video is, sometimes up to 5 minutes, maybe more if you're watching a really long video, your time is worth it. So
I totally agree. It actually hurts my brain that Mike is like a big YouTube consumer, but doesn't have it. I'm like, I don't even know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like that must be horrible. Like the roulette of not knowing.
Imagine watching Street Beefs and an ad comes off.
I can't be having Street Beefs interrupted by ads.
Yeah.
Gene, you understand.
That's terrible.
And if you start a video and then you decide you don't like it, then that's just even more wasted. You know, you're like, oh, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. You click out. Well, you already watched the 2-minute ad. They got you.
I assure you, I'm not watching Austin, Texas street fights in 4K on YouTube with ads. I can assure you that. By the way, I still don't know how that guy finds any of this stuff. He's just there at the right time to find these fucking brawls in Austin. I love it. A few other ones I wanted to call out. The Grey Poupon ad. Probably the most famous ad from my personal childhood. Love that ad.
Iconic.
Great. I know that ad from Wayne's World.
Yeah.
I had to look up the actual ad because I only knew it from Wayne's
World.
World.
You're young for that. Yeah.
Wow. I had Gears of War written down. We already talked about that. Time to Make the Donuts. Very nostalgic. The Dunkin' Donuts ad. And that guy that was on all those ads. The Micro Machine guy. Also very iconic.
Oh, yeah.
Remember the Micro Machine guy? Do you know the Micro Machine guy, Dustin? He was a guy that would like talk really, really, really fast. But he was
sounds really familiar.
His thing. Like you could look up there's a documentary about him, I think, actually.
Yeah, I think
he's
he was
like the
an
fastest
auctioneer.
speaker in the world or whatever.
Yeah.
And he was and he would just come on and talk about all the stuff. It was cool. And then a contemporary one that I actually unmute when I see, because you know when football season begins, all the commercials are new. So I have a higher tolerance for it. And then by week 3, I'm like, I can't take it anymore. First of all, I can't believe that you guys don't have more commercials. That's what always bothered me the most. Like, how are you just showing the same commercials over and over again and think that people want to watch this stuff? It's crazy. But I don't even remember what company it is. It's an insurance company, I think, but it's the one about not being your parents. Do you guys know the one I'm talking about? Yes, and there's like a guy who's like a middle, or maybe like an older guy who's the coach of younger 30-something-year-old people that are all acting like their parents, and they're fucking hysterical.
Classic.
And they're funny to me because I'm in that age where I am acting like my parents, and I am becoming my parents, and I am becoming old, and it's so they're really, really funny ads. I would highly recommend those. If you just look up "Don't Be Your Parents" ad, you'll see what I'm talking about. It's very, very good. All right, whose topic was that?
That was me.
Are you satisfied?
Yeah, I mean, as we have to do a couple quick parting shots as we sunset this bad boy for the next topic, but just to continue to sell Gene on Mad Men, you know what's so cool about that series? Even though Madison Avenue really is just kind of the backdrop for everything, it humanizes advertising because you see behind the scenes. It gives you a glimpse behind the curtain at the creative directors and the copywriters and the art directors and the executives with their name on the shingle and the clients, sometimes a stubborn client, and sometimes the client has their own in-house agency that they're pitting against the outsourcing agency. And
that's got to be so stressful. What a waste, by the way.
I see that in animation. I've been on in-house animation teams where we're pitted against outsourcers, budget-wise, quality-wise. It's part of the whole. It really made me Mad Men. The one thing it made me really become wistful for was to do some sort of show with animation studio as a backdrop, to give, whether that's anime or Western animation, to show people what it's like working on a television cartoon or an animated feature or whatever. So that's something. And also, I love what you said, Kyle, about the nature of serious advertising, especially on screen, on television, and the way that's kind of gone by the wayside, to the point where I remember 10 years ago, as that maybe it was 20 years ago, as that transition was really still happening, where there would be a serious ad and you'd be waiting for the punchline. You'd be waiting. You tell yourself this is going to get funny by the end. There's no way this could stay serious. I think the last vestiges of serious ads were like late night stuff like The Clapper, where it was funny because it was serious.
Clap on.
Or that, whatever, that alert, I've fallen and I can't get up.
Oh, man. She's
Right?
like,
Wow.
she's a legend.
Yeah.
But I don't think, maybe very cleverly they were designed to be funny. I'm not sure where I stand.
What
on that,
about
but-
what about the blatant mispronunciation of diabetes
Who was that?
on the Wilford Brimley commercial?
Yeah, Wilford Brimley.
Like, what was that all about?
Diabetes.
Like,
Diabetes.
yeah, like it's so blatant.
That's another one.
It's what I say about the West Wing, and they keep saying Concord, New Hampshire, and I'm like, that would never. You don't. Did no one stop and say, like, you don't say it like that? Will Mr. Brimley? It's not said like that. Take two, and then that's like the best take they got.
He was just too powerful.
Yeah, he's like,
you know?
exactly. He's like
It's so
he's like
crazy.
Sinatra. He just comes in and does one take.
Yeah, he's like, I'm out of here. Give me my 25 grand or whatever it was back then. And it's still the Wild West too. Like if you think of the nature of advertising for the screen, hasn't been around that long, but how far it's come. If you look at the 50s and 60s, I mean, it looks absolutely vanilla, old timey, old fashioned. They didn't really have the idea to use humor yet. The broadest thing they had was we could use live action. We could use animation. That was like, oh, we're gonna do a cartoon instead, especially for kid facing stuff, you know. And also the comparisons when it became en vogue to actually call out your competitor by name, and the corporations and the advertising agencies kind of wink, wink, nudge, nudge. We're like, yeah, because everybody knows if you go to the supermarket, you know what the laundry detergent competitors are. But they used to say brand A, B, C. And then in the 80s, probably with Coke and Pepsi, where there was like an in-industry agreement to say, we're going to call you out by name, and that's going to be the shtick. And isn't that irreverent? And now it's like everybody does that. And also what Colin called up about print. I remember Volkswagen's Western arm in the 60s and 70s, in order to sell the Beetle in the United States. Think about the culture back then, especially in the United States. People were driving boats. You had this ugly spherical shaped car, and they called it ugly in the ads in order to make people say, look, they're laughing at themselves. This is a self-deprecating thing. And isn't that cool? And what advertising is, I'm guilty of this. It's aligning yourself with an image. It's aligning yourself with the image that you want to think about for yourself, whether you just think it's funny or you want to be that way. I do it with skateboard brands. I do it with car brands. You do it with clothing. It's like, I think of myself in this way. And I don't know who could possibly be immune to that. In fact, I think we, as a culture, we talk out of both sides of our mouths with advertising, because like we're all saying, and I feel the same way, it's an annoyance. And at the same time, it's a form of entertainment. Look at us all on Super Bowl Sunday. We're waiting for the big advertising agencies and the big corporations to drop the big multi-million-dollar ads. What's going to make us laugh? What's the best one? Especially the non-sports marks, right? That's why you're sitting there on the couch with your chips. You're waiting for the commercials. The other 364 days, you mute the ads, you know? So I love the nature of it, and the fact that we're kind of embracing the cynical side and maybe even laughing at ourselves a little bit for liking it. Whether it's an ironic thing or humor, or finally acknowledging that sex sells, which we all knew but never talked about for decades. Like, yes, sex sells. Like Gene was saying, sex sells. That's just it. Now companies are just saying, they're saying everything short of that in an ad. We know sex sells. We know sex sells. So it's at this real meta. Dustin was saying this early. It's at this real meta level where we're all kind of in on the joke. And I kind of like that. The fact that we don't have to be so guarded, we could just kind of enjoy it on our terms. And then when we want to get YouTube Premium and we don't want to listen to it, then we turn it off.
Dagan, I'm reminded, speaking of sex sells, and to your earlier point about different cultures interpreting advertisements, in South Korea, their advertisements are blatantly about sex. The Asiana Airlines, they would have huge billboards that would just straight up say, "We have the most beautiful flight attendants."
That's
Period. That's it.
so refreshing.
And then the plastic surgeons would be like, "Do you want to look like this ugly woman?" and show the picture of the women, and then, or do you want to look like this beautiful women? You know, it's like they're just calling the people that they're just calling people ugly straight up.
That
which
is
like
amazing.
which is fascinating and a little disturbing.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's funny. As we part, I do have this free idea for someone. Maybe someone already does it, but I can't stop coming up with ideas of things that I think would be funny to do, like, shows and all this that have nothing to do with us. But pharmaceutical ads are a thing that are only legal in the United States and I think New Zealand. And they're some of the only serious ads you really see. They're also usually a minute long.
Great point.
And I have this idea of basically watching them and making up the stories of what's going on and who these people are, because there's never dialogue. So it's Viagra or something like that, and it's the woman and the man and they're gardening and she touches his hand, and like it would be fun to add all the texture and kind of like stop it and rewind and go over things and figure out like what's happening here, where's her wedding ring, and like I have this idea of just deep diving into pharmaceutical ads and dissecting them and creating these huge stories out of them.
I love that. Are you riffing though in a humorous way, or are you trying?
It is. It's inherently stupid because we're watching it. And we're saying, like, what did they do earlier? Like, how did they get to this point? Or this is what they're saying to each other.
That's cute. I like that.
Yeah, pharmaceutical ads are a very uniquely American phenomenon. And I always think of foreigners in the United States when I see them. Because I always wonder, some guy is here on his vacation from, I don't know, Europe somewhere. And he's like going through the TV at night and he sees that. He's like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah,
he's never seen anything like it. And it's advertising a medicine that could kill you or save you. And he's probably wondering, isn't that something your doctor does? And you're like, no, you apparently go in and tell your doctor what you want based on the commercials. Welcome to America. All right. I feel like Gene's and Dustin's topics are kind of related to each other. So I'm going to leave them for the back half, and I guess I'll go next. And we can go pretty quickly on mine, I think, unless people have deep things they want to say about this. But I was thinking about a topic recently because of a conversation I was having with a listener. So let me present it to you. The topic that I'm thinking of is dream jobs. And this came up because, as I say, I have correspondence with listeners on occasion. They DM me. Sometimes we get real serious. We'll bring it to email. And, I was talking to this guy about his life. He's just asking me for advice. I don't know why people think I should be dispensing advice, but I'm clear with them, like, okay, if that's what you want me to do, here's what I think. And I send them earnest advice or what my thoughts and my anecdotes from my life and what I've learned. And it's good. I think young men especially need someone to talk to, like guys in their 20s, especially like you don't really know what's going on. I thought I did, but I didn't. And you probably don't either. And I still don't really know what's going on. But it came up that this guy has a really great job, like a really interesting job, prestigious job, but he's just not into it. And he was talking about leaving and doing something else, chasing his real passion. And it came up that I was like, one of my pieces of advice was I was like, you got to remember kind of being in a rarefied space where I don't believe you work to be happy. I think if you can glean happiness out of the capitalistic necessity that we have to owe ourselves to something for our lives like this, then that's great. But I think it's naive to think that you can be truly happy working. Like I don't, that's kind of been my experience. And we were going back and forth. He's like, it's insane because I would think that you were doing exactly what you want to do. And I'm like, no. Like, I'm doing what I love to do, something I love doing. That is at the nexus, as it were, and I'm using that word again, the nexus of reality, necessity, and something that's doable. And I made it happen. But if you were to back up and ask me, what is like the ideal, perfect dream job? No, it wouldn't be this. And with that, I'm curious if you guys can kind of relate to that and what you might look at as your dream job. And I was making Michael laugh because I was like, my dream job. First of all, I want to reiterate, I love what I do. I'm honored to do what I do. I think it's amazing. But this has downsides, right? I mean, everything has downsides. So you want to be able to, when you're kind of hypothetically thinking about this exercise, you want to go with something that you might not be tired of or be tired of less, or it doesn't have all the, for me, for instance, this job comes with, it's high stakes. I'm the CEO of a business, a lot of money in and out, right? Like people need to be paid and things need to happen and things can fail and everyone's kind of looking to you. It's fucking stressful, and it drives me insane sometimes. It drives me truly insane sometimes. And so I was making Michael laugh because I was saying like, I would be like a fucking man of leisure, straight up like 19th century Southern dandy. Like, what do you, like the guys at the Continental Congress in the 1770s and 1780s, what the fuck were they doing?
Your Southern gentleman voice will come real handy right there.
Exactly. These guys were meeting and like, it's like, what the fuck were you guys doing? They were there for months at a time, just like hanging out, figuring shit out, talking and thinking. And now, of course, they were famous planters and they had great businesses and they were great thinkers and all of that. I'm none of those things. But I just look at that and I'm like, yeah, I would be like some sort of Southern dandy man of leisure. Like, just what do I do? Oh, I'm like a naturalist today. I'm going to go look at trees. And then the next day I'm going to get real deep into a book about this. And then the next day I'm just going to kind of exist and take it all in, and maybe really appreciate art or something. I don't know. It sounds insane, but if you could unmoor yourself from the pressing capitalism all around us, and I don't mean that necessarily as a negative thing. I think it's the best solution available. I think the alternatives to capitalism are worse than capitalism. So we have capitalism and I think it's great. But if you could just live and be, I even think that like I would be, if I could be anything, it would be like, I'd be a professor of gaming history at a fucking Ivy League college. I would do something that would meld all of my loves together. So it's interesting to kind of break you. I'm so comfortable in my job and so used to doing it for 21 years that you never think of not doing it. And so with that, I want to pitch it over to you. Gene, I'm very curious where you're at and we all in our own way have a dream job to someone, right? Or to lots of people.
Sure.
And the journalist in me, although the journalist in me is dormant and probably permanently dead, is very jealous that you work at the Washington Post. That's fucking good shit, dude. I'm so happy for you and so pleased for you that you get to like work at such an awesome newspaper, especially because I think, and I'm not just saying this, I think the Washington Post being in second place has allowed it, or like with the Wall Street Journal, and has allowed it to avoid being castigated like the New York Times has been by everyone. So it has more respect. I think it's kind of the perfect place. And you have this opportunity to, like you said, when you were on NPR, talk about games to a wider audience, get them to love and care about it. It's kind of a dream job. I mean, it's amazing, but what would you do if you could do anything? I mean, have you thought about it?
Yeah, definitely. And I have an immediate answer that I'll get to. But I will say regarding my role at the Washington Post, I've been working at there for 8 years now. So I'm actually kind of becoming an old hand, a new old newsroom hand around, kind of a veteran now. Especially we hired so many young people in the last like 2-3 years. I feel like I definitely feel like the uncle in the room now at this point.
Uncle Gene. Yes.
But it was my dream job. Well, my dream journalism job, not my dream job, to be precise, was to work at the Los Angeles Times. I love the LA Times. I love the way the LA Times is in tune with the community. I want to live in Southern California. I went to school in Southern California, so I have a lot of nostalgia for that area. And I never got it. They kept rejecting me. It wasn't until recently, after I worked at the Washington Post, that I finally got an interview with the Los Angeles Times, and they can't afford me anymore, which is crazy.
Well, good for you.
Yeah, which is amazing. So the Washington Post far exceeds the level of what I ever thought I would ever achieve, which is why I always do my job with some kind of with the spirit of gratitude, because I never ever thought that I would make it to the so-called quote unquote Valhalla of journalism, which is basically being employed in the New York Times, the Washington Post, or the Wall Street Journal, one of the three. Because of all the newspapers that are dying, those three are not going to go away, because the New York Times is a paper record for America, Wall Street Journal is for the business sector, and the Washington Post is for the politics sector. We got all that locked down, right? But it's still frustrating, there's still a lot of pressure. So my dream job, and this has never changed for a long, long time. It's been to be a country western singer.
What?
Just like Joel from The Last of Us.
Wow.
Which is why when Joel said that he wanted to be a singer and he wanted to be a country singer, I was like, it's a man after my own heart.
Yeah, you guys are like, that's your guy.
Yeah,
in
we're
fiction.
basically the same guy.
Yeah.
Oh, the Gene plot.
But that was the most when I related to him. I was like, man, I would love to just like go around to small venues, not even a big one. I would ideally have a fiddler, a violinist, because that would perfect the sound that I'd be looking for. And I would so I used to play open mic a lot. Well, I used to be in a punk band, and we can talk about music a lot more later. But after punk, I started to go get into more country and folk singing. So I would go to the open bar, the surf bar back on Guam, and I would just do open mic. And I would bring my harmonica. I had a harmonica rack. So I was basically like Bob Dylan or Neil Young, and I would be singing all these old country western standards by Hank Williams, Merle Haggard. And it was just the best time of my life. I when I think about the happiest I've ever been in my life, it is singing with a southern drawl up on stage to a bunch of drunk men who are marveling at this tall, lanky Asian dude singing country music to them. But I love the music. I love how relaxing it is. It's easy to play. It's fun to sing. The reason why I got into journalism in the first place was because I wanted to be a music journalist. I wanted to be like Cameron Crowe,
Oh, dude, that's so cool.
Touring with the bands and everything. That was my romantic feat. But really, I didn't want to just be a touring journalist. I wanted to be the touring musician. I want to be able to sing that. And I don't know if it'll ever happen. Who knows? I'm 41. There's still time.
There's time, dude.
There's always time for an elderly Asian country western singer.
You got this.
Yeah, elderly Asian. You got 3 times more time than I do at your age as an aging white man.
Yeah.
You're gonna be in great shape. You have all. Yeah. You could reinvent yourself 2 more times probably.
I feel like there's a market for this, Gene.
That is exactly the plan. That is exactly the plan. That if things don't work out with this whole Washington Post thing or whatever, that I would just live this third life, this lifespan of being a country western singer.
Hell yeah, dude! I got your back.
Yeah, this is an easy question to answer. It's country western singing. That's it.
I love it, man. Yeah, you remind me that, Ramon, my best friend, who always comes up on the show, he's a touring musician, and I always told him if he got, I said this especially at IGN, it wouldn't really be possible anymore, but I was like, I would quit my job here in a minute if you went on to like a big tour and I could like be just a roadie and experience what that was like the life of rock and the life of the tour and all of that. I've always been fascinated by that. And so yeah, to be a drummer in a rock band would have of course would be a dream as well. But again, I'm trying to find, it's important because I wanted to touch on this again, that I'm trying to find the thing in my mind in this hypothetical that wouldn't stress me out. Mm-hmm. It's like you would assume if I was a man of leisure that I was independently wealthy, right? Mm-hmm. And then you can do whatever you want to do. But like when I think about, okay, so you have to be a rock drummer. And it's like, okay, so I have to play 25 songs a night and not fuck up and have people staring at me and all. It's like, so it's just the same stresses that, same kind of stress that I would have under all these other hypothetical capitalistic pursuits, which is, that's why I like this question though, for this very reason. I'm curious, Dustin, what do you think about this? What is your dream job?
You mentioned the idea of the touring musician, and that's something that when I was in, junior high and high school, I really, really wanted. Was never good enough to ever do anything like that, but I did. You mentioned, Colin, that you always wanted to go on a tour with Ramon or something like that. I was lucky enough to do I'm trying to remember if it was 5 or 6 day stint on a tour with my one friend, his band Mike Maines and the Branches, starting in San Diego all the way up to San Francisco. And it was a very eye-opening experience being on a tour, which they've done their own headlining tours, but they weren't the headliner on this tour. They were opening for a band called May. And it was an eye-opening experience being on this tour just because it was not, I don't want to say it wasn't fun. I had an awesome time, but I got there and Mike, the singer of the band, was really sick. like laying in the van before the show because he felt like he was dying. And so there was this, sickness throughout the week. You're sleeping on people's floors. When we were in San Francisco, we slept in this guy's house. It's so funny. He worked for Tesla, but he had this tiny, he had a house in San Francisco, so that's saying something. But we were all of us on the tour were in this tiny living room, and all of us were just sleeping. It was like 7 people in a room probably as big as this room that I'm in right now. So it was a fun experience being able to do that. But it also, it was much later in my life where I wasn't really thinking that was something I was going to do or trying to do, but it was almost a relief. It was like, well, that was fun, but I'm glad I was there for 6 days and not 3 months, because it was tough. And so I can't even imagine. But for me, a dream job, this is tough because Colin, you said this already, but we already all have kind of dream jobs. And for me,
definitely,
I know the audience has heard this before, but it's worth repeating in a small way, just that from 2013 to 2018, I worked to try to get into this industry, and this was my dream job. And so when I finally got here, I never have really thought about any dream jobs at all, because I'm doing exactly what I wanted to do. I lived in fear of recording dance recitals for the rest of my life and doing, local ads for Facebook and stuff like that. So I really do, in a lot of ways, feel like I'm living the dream, so to say. If we want to take this further, though, I can make the dream job sweeter, which is what I thought about, and is that the only way that would be sweeter is just eliminating the stuff I don't like about this job and doing the things I like.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
If I could just roll up, actually a big dream, to be able to do a podcast and just show up. And that's it. I've never been a part of anything like that. I've always, which is fine. It makes sense because I am through and through a production guy. But if I could do this job where I'm just recording, 3 or 4 times a week, and that's it, then yeah, that would obviously be the dream. But I don't have any kind of unrealistic expectations about what my full skill set is, So, and I do enjoy the production to some degree. I enjoy putting together the thumbnails. It's really exciting when I know that sometimes you have ones that are like, well, this just works and I can't think of anything else. Sometimes you have ones that you're kind of not sure. And then you have ones that are it's going to light up on Twitter and Discord when you got that thumbnail. And I love that production aspect of it. And even just this week has been super exciting from a production standpoint, putting together the intro. And that was an awesome collaboration with Dagan and Ramon, where we kind of all Dagan did the animation, Ramon with the music, and I was able to kind of put it together in a way that flows. That's fucking awesome. I love doing stuff like that. And people immediately noticing and saying, this intro rules. Yes, that's awesome, because we worked really hard on it. There was a lot of man hours across the 3 of us with that intro. So yeah, I've tried to think like what else that I would really want to do, and I don't know. I feel like I'm living it. So I guess that's just kind of my answer in the end.
Yeah, I like your answer. Your answer has better parameters than the way I was approaching it, which was that I can't divorce the good from the bad. So what would you like? Where would you find yourself? But it all has. That's the thing, is that you have to pretend the grass is always greener too, right?
Right.
I would never leave doing this because it is the perfect combination of achievability, what I like to do, profitability, all these different things that marry together. But that's just because the situation is as it is capitalistically and out of necessity and all of those things. I really have tried to challenge myself to, like, maybe it's a little bit of listening to, and it's strange to say, but listening to dudes like Aaron Rodgers more now that he's a Jet, and just listening to interviews with him and other people and hearing him on Rogan, or hearing Rogan rather talk about him and similar sorts of things, where it's like just having this more open-mindedness to these other potential outcomes and what you can glean out of it, even though you don't live those lives and maybe shouldn't and don't want to and can't. Anyway, Dave, what do you think about this deep, heady question of what you could do with your dream job?
I love this question because it's on my mind a lot. I know Colin knows this more so than you two guys, but the first thing I want to say, Kyle, is what you said early on in this topic in imparting your advice to other people is I would absolutely say no matter what your age is, no matter what walk of life, no matter how lucrative your career is, if you're unhappy, change it. Find a way to change it. There may be many obstacles. There may be not too many obstacles in your way, depending on your exact specific situation. But life is just too damn short to be unhappy. And for most of us, working is such a large part of that, right? Until retirement age, God bless, hopefully, that it's absolutely unthinkable to be unhappy. And also there's part of that too, that I have to practice what I preach, but I deeply believe in that. And why I'm so mindful of this is because it's interesting. There's a lot of texture to this conversation for me because I am living my dream job that I've wanted to do since I was probably 5 years old. I knew very early on as I grasped my first crayon when I was 5 years old, I knew that I wanted to work in cartoons. I didn't know exactly what that it would entail, but I knew that would always be my direction in life. And in fact, of just concentrating in art and ignoring other subjects and just really having a really huge conviction, even as a kid, that this is what I was going to do and this is what I loved. And it's always been my passion. And fueled by things along the way, like discovering anime in the late 70s and all that kind of thing.
Okay, we had a technical hiccup. So if Dagan can pick it up from here, I have no idea. But Dagan, take it away.
These things happen. Yeah, so let me bore you guys with the details of my animation career. So since I was young enough to hold a crayon, right? Always wanted to draw cartoons. Grandfather taught me how to draw Mickey Mouse when I was 5. You guys know the whole spiel. But I love it. And it's a precious, precious gift from God. I love animating. I love designing characters. I mean, it's a blessing. Take a script from a writer and develop a storyboard, draw out a storyboard. I mean, there could be no more gratifying, fun career. I mean, I have a dream job, really, in essence. But what has always been hard for me and something that I've always found to be a battle, just because of my nature, is the nature of my career insofar as the nomadic lifestyle, the instability, the lack of continuity. You're always working on a fixed contract, a specific amount of time before you have to find the next job. And that's been challenging. I've also been very lucky that I've very rarely, very brief stints of time not had a job. I've always gotten work. I've always gone from job to job. It's always worked out. But it is stressful, especially with a family. And I think that's just my type A personality kicking in. I'm not the go with the flow type of guy that a lot of guys and gals that work in animation could deal with. You know, in fact, they kind of like it. They know they're going to be off a project. They'll take that opportunity to go on vacation or something like that. But for me, it's always been something that I've been at odds with. But the upside to all this is when Kyle first approached me to podcast about 5 years ago, it's something unbeknownst to me that I fell in love with. I found another thing that I was passionate about. And I always chalk it up in these conversations to growing up with talk shows and just listening to interesting, intelligent people talk about the things that they're passionate about. Dating all the way back to Dick Cavett and listening to Charlie Rose interview film directors and actors and Terry Gross, right? Talking about Fresh Air, Gene, and NPR and all that kind of stuff. Just listening to just kind of really the passion of creative endeavors and hearing people talk about things intelligently and stuff. I always loved the art of conversation. But I realized very recently that plays into much earlier in my life, actually, that sort of sitting around and having a conversation was a really big, important aspect of my family, of the adults around me growing up, whether it was my parents or my grandparents. We had a cousin who was actually my mom's cousin, Carl, who was big on this, who would come over. And the whole thing was just about spending time together around the kitchen table, having a conversation, telling stories, commiserating, laughing, reminiscing about things, talking shit, having coffee, having ciggies, having Entenmann's cake. And the whole thing was just spending time together. It was a no frills thing. Nobody wanted anything except to spend time, engaged in conversation and enjoying each other. And I think I always kind of observed that as a kid. and appreciated. I don't know if it was comforting, if there was a certain thing around it where I just saw the older people around me honestly, genuinely just enjoying each other's company and engaging in these conversations and just enjoying each other's stories. And I think for me, so a dream job for me would actually be in many ways to do this full time, not only because I love it so much, but I would love in a perfect world to do the Last Stand Media stuff and then spin off and do my own independent podcasting, which would then facilitate me to take up my own independent creative endeavors, do my own animated projects. And I have an idea for kind of an all-encompassing media company that heavily includes animation, but other content too, that I love the idea of doing. But I'm in the process of getting my sea legs under me in terms of having enough conviction and having enough confidence in myself to do it, which would also sort of rescue me from being beholden to the studio system, which has been difficult, especially as I get older. You know, I start thinking to myself, is this going to be the rest of my life? Am I going to spend the next 20 years working, even though it's super fun and I've made wonderful friends and got to work on awesome projects for some great companies, big and small? You know, there's a lot of upside to it, but am I going to kind of go on with this whole thing of just rolling from project to project, from studio to studio, from gig to gig, and just kind of in between enjoying some of that time, but then spending a certain percentage of my time, let's say 40% of my time, worrying about the next thing, waiting for the next shoe to drop. As I get older, that seems less and less likely that I could even endure that. So what can I do? The podcasting thing is something that I would definitely really enjoy. And then at a certain point along the line, there's a couple of others. So that's really my dream job, is to say, can you do podcasting as a full thing? And then, you know, breaking free of the shackles of working for animation studios, finally having your own animated content, and just that whole thing of creating art on your own terms. And if there's an audience for it, they're wonderful. Not necessarily chasing the money, but hopefully the money will come if you just kind of apply that old adage of just doing what you believe in and doing what you really love to do. And hopefully the money will follow, type of thing. And just kind of trying to embrace that philosophy now. That would be my ultimate thing. There's been points along the road too, which I think play into my struggles with the nature of being a professional animator, where I remember, Colin knows this, but I remember 9/11 was probably what invoked this for me. Was I have a career, and whether it's podcasting or animation, I know I provide a service for people. I work in entertainment, and especially with podcasting, because it's such an audience facing thing. And I know you guys probably go through this too. You get a lot of feedback from audience saying how much what you do means to them in the various podcasting and stuff. And that's awesome. And I know there's value in that. But sometimes the podcasting and sometimes the animation especially feels very self-indulgent in that I'm doing the thing I love to do, or that I'm using my God-given talents, if you believe in that sort of thing, and I'm lucky enough to make money off it, and that's awesome. But it seems kind of self-indulgent. It's a little too fun. It's entertainment, and there's other important things. And I always was very wistful about the idea somewhere along the lines of my 20s and 30s that, and I'm not even sure exactly where this comes from. I know partially it probably comes from admiring my childhood pediatrician, Dr. Mario LaPera, because he was one of the coolest, most comforting guys, a presence in my life growing up that I probably only saw, in all fairness, 2 or 3 times a year. But I just really loved this man. He had his whole demeanor had a big impact on me. And I think part of it was his personality, but also that he was just a healer through and through. Like, he even healed your psyche. He even made you feel better. You never worried about getting your booster shots or your immunizations. It was actually kind of a really comforting place to go, the doctor's office, as a kid. And I think there's something in that says, wouldn't it be cool to work in a job that's so important in a different way than what we do as entertainers, right? Where you're a healer, you're doing something important. And I think my personality, or just who I am, I have a lot of empathy. And I just think I'd be very good at that job, especially because I think kids are so cool. Like Dr. LaPera, I think working in pediatrics in some form would have been a very rewarding career for me. It's a very different path. I would have had to do much better in school. So this would have never had, this has to be a whole like in another life type of scenario. But it's something that I think about a lot, where I think I could have really been, it could have been a very fulfilling life. I really admire doctors in general, but especially something about pediatrics specifically really talks to me. And I definitely get wistful of the idea of what if you did better in school, and what if you weren't, given a desire to draw or even a talent for drawing and art. How could that have gone? And the only other thing I could think of that again, didn't apply to me or occur to me early on that I probably recognized somewhere in my 20s was I think I would have really enjoyed being a live action filmmaker. Now, talk about an even tougher career with odds against you than being a professional animator, which you better be talented and you better be tenacious if you're going into animation. There's not that many, it's very specialized. There's not that many jobs. So it's not like being a graphic designer or every company has some sort of art department. Animation is a very specific, very specialized thing. Live action filmmaking is probably even more so, but it's something that I love storytelling. I love telling stories. I love listening to stories, and I love acting, and I love performance. And I think what could have been a really cool way for me to exercise that would be to direct live action film. I definitely have a lot of visions. I have a lot of ideas for storytelling. And it was later on in my adult life where I realized not all of those ideas apply to cartooning and animation. Some of them apply to some of them, I think some of it was discovering live action filmmakers that I really admire too. So those would be my dream jobs in a different world. I think the podcasting thing and starting my own animation endeavors is something that's actually kind of exciting because it's within the realm of possibility. I just have to learn how to sort of embrace that side of my brain, take a risk.
Yeah, your risk aversion is legendary. I mean, it's
tough.
It's crazy.
You recognize it as part of your personality after a while, where you're just
but I think it's like a totally different level with you. Yeah, like it's because I consider myself completely conservative in that sense and risk averse too.
Yeah.
I only made moves when I was, felt pretty certain that it could work.
Sure. Sure.
But there was no guarantees. You can't get any more guarantees than that. You have to just kind of do it.
There's never any.
There's going to always be a risk.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there's
it can
never
be horrible.
Really...
It could fucking totally blow up. You have no idea.
No, and it's different too for Dagan. I think that I'm sure in the back of your mind all the time is that you have kids.
Yeah,
you got mouths to feed, and
yes,
expenses coming up. They're going to eventually go to college, and even if you're not paying for their college, there's still some degree of expenses, and so that makes it extra scary, I would think, when you've got, your own business unit of your family relying on income too,
Yeah, it's prohibitive and it raises a lot of fears. You got what I'm kind of dealing with, or the thing that I wrestle with, is you have to sort of overcome the frightening aspects of that and find a way to not let it present too much of an obstacle, and also just taking baby steps while you're doing the other things. It's like in a perfect world, I don't know that I'm the best multitasker. So in a perfect world, I would just sort of cut off one and start the other, but that's not, reality doesn't work that way. So taking baby steps and making small inroads at achieving something independent is really the idea I have to embrace with this type of thing. And again, it is exciting, but the fears could definitely hold you back. I have to find a way to break free of that, and just kind of invoke it. But again, it's not like being a doctor where it's like, if I was joking on Twitter about this recently, if I went back to medical school at 49, I don't know if that's ever been done. That sounds like nearly impossible, if not completely impossible. But, me becoming a full-time podcaster and doing my own independent media is definitely in the realms of possibility, but I have to find a way to do it. And like Colin's saying, there's no 100% guarantees that it's going to succeed, but the regret is the worst thing for me. Like having gone to my grave not trying is unthinkable. So I have to always invoke that part of me where it's like, at least you could have said you tried, and then you could go to plan B if plan B is necessary. But let's stick to plan A for now, you know?
Yeah. I think you have to, I took my experience trying to do political commentary really serious just because it wasn't working for me personally. It's something I always thought I wanted, but the money was great, but it was just, it's like soul sucking. It was awful, but I know now, which is nice. And I tried to do that for a little bit, and sometimes, so that's the point, is like, sometimes you fail because, not because the financial reality wouldn't work for you, but because that was an even worse outcome than what you were doing before, you know? And so I had to make a change there as well. So you have to be nimble. And there are times I'm so anxiety ridden about change, really, that it's, in looking back, it's so funny that I made the moves I did when, you know, and I just get into these zones every once in a while where I know something has to be done about something. You know, I've been in a few of those situations personally, in a relationship, with a job, whatever, where you just have, you know, that I think we were talking about it recently on another show, that feeling inside of you where you know something is inexorable.
Yes. It's a crossroads,
and
really.
Yeah.
You know,
like it needs to be done, whether you're breaking up with someone, whether you're getting a new job, whether you're going to school, whether you're doing whatever. Yeah. The crossroads. It's interesting. So yeah, this was a fun exercise because I was curious what you guys would have to say about this. And Dagan, you can follow the same path Gene's doing right now as he's getting more and more into independent media on his meteoric rise to country
Gene's
western singer. Yeah.
What Gene was saying occurs to me too. Something occurred to me when Gene was speaking specifically too, Kyle, which we're all lucky enough, I think, to know, is that there's also a dynamic when you do something, when you have the opportunity to do something that you love professionally. With Gene, it's, you know, working in news coverage. It could be podcasting for all of us. With me, it's animation. You recognize at a certain point, at least I go through this specifically with animation, where it's like, I have this, and I say this with all humility, but this is something I've been dealing with for a long time, is you have the feelings once you get good enough at something where it's like, I have better ideas than this. I could do this better on my own. And I think not acting on those feelings is going to always make it feel like there's a hole that you're not fulfilling. You know, I have that a lot, where I'm like, this is a bad idea, or I could do this 10 times better, or I could think of, we could write a better premise or whatever. And a lot of that is, if I probably wouldn't even mind doing it 9 to 5 if I could just do that on my own, you know, and kind of fill in those gaps and kind of feel like you're realizing your potential or telling your own story, not just working in a service capacity to somebody else. And maybe that's the creative, you know, that the creative side of our personalities too. But you start to get very self-critical when you do something, you're lucky enough to do something that you really care about for a living. And that's something I need to act on with animation too, specifically, where it's like, I have these really good ideas. I want to tell these stories. I want to make people laugh or impart this vision. And I can't do that working in a service capacity because I'm being told to do a specific job. That's my job. That's what I'm getting paid for. So there is that too.
Yeah, the ball's very much in your court. And yeah, and parting in this topic before we move on is I will say that I think it's important that, because I just think that this topic is about, in my opinion, like reality versus dreaming, and it's important to dream and think big and think about what you want, what you could do, and what could be different. I think that's fun. But I personally believe that people have to be very careful about chasing happiness and ignoring reality. And I see that a lot. So that when I hear that people want to take big jumps or make big leaps, it's like, that's cool. But what does that do for you if the situation doesn't pan out or you make less money? Because there's nothing wrong with not making a lot of money. There's nothing wrong with living paycheck to paycheck. Other than that, that's not an ideal thing, but that's the situation a lot of people find themselves in.
Right.
But the worst thing you can do is to not be in that situation and put yourself in that situation, right? Like by choice, because you ignored reality and you said, like, I'm going to live for happiness. And then it's like, well, how happy are you going to be now? You know, that's why I always say it's important that people balance the financial realities and the economic realities, and unfortunately this capitalistic reality that we live in, and try to extract. And I love the way you put it, Dave, like doing something that you love for a living. I mean, that's cool, but you're not necessarily doing it for happiness. I don't try to tie up my personal happiness with what I do professionally. I am really trying to seek it outside. And it feels fruitless sometimes because I am so much my job and I so much live this job, but I want to make sure I don't lose touch with that dreamer, that like says like, oh, I'm not complacent, that I want something else, that you always need to want something else, that you're dead if you don't want something else. I guess that's kind of where it comes from. So I don't know if that resonates with people out there, but that's where my mind's at.
Well said.
All right. It's time to get into this musical duo of topics. I love it. I love music. We all do. Dagan and I always make fun of people on Knockback when you encounter the person that doesn't like music. It's like, you don't listen to any music. How is that possible? How do you not?
There's something wrong with that.
How do you not drown out? I listen to music for hours a day. Like every day. Play it. I just need it. There's something inside of us that needs it. So these topics will be very special to us. And Gene, I want to start with you. You wanted to talk about concert going, and I think this is an awesome topic because it's something I'm quite experienced in, and I can't wait to hear your stories because I'm sure you have some interesting ones.
Yeah. So as some of you may know, I grew up on Guam, and we didn't get concerts for shit out there, man.
Man.
Like when a Christian rock group would show up at church, we'd be like, "Oh my God, they're here!" And like I don't know what they're. It was like something like live alive or something like that. Like they sound
Live
like
Alive.
Yeah, they sound like a fucking Square Enix game, So the very first concert I ever attended, and I've been obviously I want to be a country western music center. I've been a huge fan of music for all my life, and I always wanted to go to concerts, but I just never did. The first concert I ever attended to was on Guam, and it was Sammy Hagar, the former the second half singer of Van Halen, and it wasn't Van Halen even. It was just Sammy Hagar and like his band. And when he was singing Van Halen songs and like he covered like Whole Lotta Love by Led Zeppelin, I was like, oh my God, he's just like Jimmy Page, It was like the closest approximation to like, Robert Plant and Jimmy Page that I had.
Quick question. Yeah. Sammy Hagar was known to wear the ear mic. Do you remember if he wore it when you?
I don't remember. I don't remember.
I love that. That's like one of my favorite aesthetics of his. Yeah. Anyway, go on.
Like Madonna, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So when I finally went to school in California, I partook in all the concerts that I could. I went to so many. I saw, at the drive-in, if you remember that band.
Yeah.
I saw Jimmy Eat World. I saw the Flaming Lips. I think the best concert of my early youth was when I saw Parliament Funkadelic. George Clinton.
Oh,
G-Funk.
wow.
And they played at the Anaheim House of Blues, and they went for 4 hours with no breaks. Like by the end of the night, it was like 2 a.m. and the audience was exhausted. We were all sitting down or on the floor, and they were still going. George Clinton was still yelling, "Shit, goddamn, get off your ass and jam," And it was like transcendental to the point where I was also exhausted too. And then I moved back to Guam, and then it was back to the shitty concert minds. Although I did get to interview and see rapper Exhibit live.
X to the Z,
cool.
Yeah, X to the Z, most famously known for what is the car show? I'm totally blanking.
Oh, Pimp My Ride.
Yeah,
that's
Pimp My
right.
Ride. Yes. He became more famous for Pimp My Ride than his own rapping abilities, which were pretty good and substantial, But it wasn't until I finally moved back to Hawaii where, Hawaii still didn't get like a ton of concerts, but Hawaii was a good stop for a lot of touring tours because, it's the last stop. So you got to like do your show and you got to hang out in Hawaii for a little bit as a little mini vacation. So I saw the Police.
I'm so jealous, dude. Yeah, I had tickets to see them and I got hired at IGN.
Oh, man, that sucks, man.
And Ramon went with it. Ramon and I were supposed to go see him at Giant Stadium, 2007.
Yeah.
And then at Fenway, I want to say, or Foxborough. So we had tickets to both of those shows, and I got hired. So I left. So he went with his mom, which was cool. But they hate each other, so it was crazy that they got together at all. And you knew it was only going to be that time. So I made a decision.
That's
I had to go. I was like, this is the only time. And the cool thing was is that Eddie Vedder is actually a part-time resident of Honolulu, and he actually sat in front of me during the whole show.
Oh shit!
So I just got to like stare at the back. I was mostly staring at the back of Eddie Vedder's head, and I was like, holy shit, it's fucking Eddie Vedder, dude. And he was so cool. Like he kept having to get up because his phone kept ringing. But he was so apologetic to like literally everyone around him. He's so humble and like he's exactly like you would expect. Like
Gene, did you? I'm sorry to interrupt you. I have to ask you this because you might have seen this. Did you see the recent? When Rage Against the Machine toured last year?
Yeah.
And they had the blonde guy from Food Network with the spike hair, Guy Fieri.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And so he was like in the pit with a beer, and like someone zoomed in on him, like no one knew he was there, and he was just like rocking out to.
Yeah.
Bomb Track or whatever. It was so funny, man. I was like, I would have been focused on him the entire time. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, I was just mostly watching Eddie Vedder enjoy the Police.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
One of the most transcendental concert experiences of my lifetime was seeing Incubus live.
Oh
too.
Yeah, dude. I've seen them a few times. They're great.
I've never been I was never really a huge fan of them, but when I saw them live, I was super stoned. First of all, I was like really, really high, and then like they just started playing like the most progressive rock crap, and I was just like, Incubus is incredible. Like I totally have been sleeping on them. So that was an example of a concert that kind of like turned me around in the band, and I was like, Incubus was okay. They're cool to. Like I think they were severely underrated, at least in terms of like their musicianship. Tool came to Hawaii. I saw Tool. That was also incredible. The Cure.
Oh shit!
One of the most interesting, because I told you before earlier that I wanted to be a music journalist, so I got to cover some concert too. And my favorite concert that I covered was 3-6 Mafia, from Tennessee. The southern, they were so ahead of time in terms of the southern hip hop movement, and I got to hang out with them in the VIP lounge, and it was amazing because like Juicy J, like offered me cocaine. And at that time, I wasn't really doing a lot of cocaine, so I was working, so I was like, I'm good. And he was like, okay. And I was like, what do you like about Hawaii? And he just looked at me like bleary eyed, and he was like, everything. And I was like, okay, everything. I wrote that. And like it was a VIP area too, so like there was like a couple in the back like having sex, like just straight up. It was amazing. And like I love 3-6 Mafia. Like they were like my favorite rap group, like after the Wu-Tang Clan, in terms of just influence and the amount of time that I listened to them. So the fact that I was like hanging out with them was just mind blowing. I was like, this is a dream. I'm living the Cameron Crowe dream right now at this moment, you know. What other concerts have I been to? I've seen Bob Dylan 5 times. Bob Dylan is
our dad would love you.
Yeah.
Isn't
I probably
he a bit
have
mixed? Depending on the night. That's what I've always heard about him, is that he sometimes is 10 out of 10 amazing, and other times it's like a different artist.
The first time I saw him, he was 10 out of 10 amazing. Like he did covers of his old songs that sounded like fucking Rage Against the Machine. Like he was just rocking hard on some of the like new versions of like old songs, and it was incredible. And he had an amazing band with him. And then other times I'm just like, is he barely alive? The last time I saw him was here in DC. And half the show, he sang Frank Sinatra covers. And he would be sitting down for his own songs, but when it came to Frank Sinatra, he'd be standing up, pacing up and down the stage, like swinging the microphone. I was like, dude, Dylan, you should just sing what you want to sing, man. Like you've been touring for so long, you should just be singing Frank Sinatra songs, like covers. That'd be amazing. We would all go see it and watch you have fun.
And we would all love it. Yeah. My dad was making fun of him. Dagan probably heard this story about how he saw him recently at like Madison Square Garden or something, and he was blowing a napkin across the stage or some weird, like doing some weird stagecraft. I was like, what? He's like, it was horrible.
Losing his shit.
He was like, so, and he saw Clapton recently and said that sucked too. Like that Eric Clapton literally didn't even acknowledge the crowd one time. Came out and played and then just bounced.
Yeah.
Like, didn't even say anything. You know?
That was me with Bruce
weird.
Springsteen, and I love Bruce Springsteen, you know, like seminal singer, especially in my college years and growing up, you know. So when I finally got to see him here in DC, I was so excited, and I was so disappointed because like all of the songs were just like anthem rockers. They all like bled into each other. He went on for way too long, and it was really boring. So I mean, this I guess is a nice segue into like worst concerts I've seen. I think the worst concert I've ever been to was Justin Timberlake. And it's not because Justin Timberlake is a bad artist. He's very entertaining. He's very talented, right? But this was for his Man of the Woods album. And I don't know why I decided to go see him on that specific tour. But that was
the 2020 experience.
Huh?
Didn't he do a tour with Jay-Z right before that? His previous tour?
I guess so. And it sucks that I missed that one. And I had to see his Man of the Woods concert where they had a literal fucking fireplace in the middle of the stage. And he stopped singing Justin Timberlake songs to sit around this fireplace and sing Come Together by the Beatles and like other Beatles songs. And I was like, what the fuck are you doing, dude? Like, we came here to see Justin Timberlake sing this song from Trolls. Shut the fuck up, you know? Dance, motherfucker.
Perform for you, dance.
So that was awful. But I think the best shows that I've ever seen now, one, and, you know, is my fallen hero, Kanye West. He played at the Capital One Arena, and this was during the Pablo tour.
Spicy.
Yes. So
Damn.
this was actually exactly right before he started to talk about Trump. And when he did the show in DC, he had really bad reviews for his fashion show in Paris. And he hadn't done like a long Kanye rant in a long, long time. He kind of stopped that for a while. But it was on my show that he decided to say, stop the music. And he was talking about for 50 minutes about seeing the colors and like blah, blah, blah. And then like I heard everyone around us saying, what the fuck is he talking about? But the show around that rant was incredible because this was the one where he had the floating stage over the people.
Shit.
So there was like lights underneath going with the beats, and there was a mosh pit underneath the stage. So it was just like mind blowing. It was just like I was like, I can see why Kanye West is like the artist of the generation. And then the other shows I've seen, these are all the big modern performers. Beyonce is just like. It's like seeing a Beyonce concert is like playing a PlayStation first party exclusive. Like you just know that it's going to be like luxuriously, like the production value is just going to be absolutely luxurious, even though it's a little impersonal. And then the other side of that, and you know, both of these women are on tour, is Taylor Swift. I saw Taylor Swift in that stadium, and I went by myself, and I had an amazing time. I really connected with Taylor in a way that I didn't expect, because the contrary to Eric Clapton, she acknowledges the audience all the time.
Yeah.
And she would be like talking to us, and I would be like, yes, Taylor, it is my own self-doubt that's holding me back, you know. And I was like tearing up. I couldn't believe it. And I enjoyed Taylor Swift up until that point, but it was around that time where I was just like, I think I'm actually a Swiftie now, you know.
Right on.
Yeah,
I love that. Dude, this topic speaks to my heart. I think it's going to speak to all of us because I love live music. It's funny because we have this, I guess, faux controversy on our show on Sacred Symbols about whether you should sing during concerts or not. And I have this thing where I hate that people sing during concerts, like loudly. Mm-hmm. Like you're not here to hear you singing. You can mouth the lyrics. You can sing them to yourself. So it's very loud. But people and this dude responded to me and he was like, I've been to more than 100 shows. And I was like, dude, I've been to 35 311 shows. How many shows do you think I've been to? Like, I don't need you to throw around this number like it means anything.
Yeah.
But we have this fake controversy going around about whether you should sing during concerts or not. And I say, you got to respect the people around you and not sing right at the concerts. That's my personal thing. And I rarely ever see it. That's why I'm so interested that people are like so adamant about it. But I also don't see Taylor Swift live. I can't even imagine what that's like. But I wrote down some concerts that I've been to that I wanted to call out. I can go through these quick and we can get to the other guys here and hear what they have to say. I also have a bad concert venue that I want to call out as well. Okay. A venue where the concerts are bad. And I'll talk about that briefly. The first show I ever saw was BB King with my dad, my sister, or our sister Allie, and her boyfriend at the time, Skip, who was a guitar player. And he actually helped get me my first drum set and stuff when I was younger. And I saw him at like, I don't know where it was, Westbury or something on Long Island, but it was interesting to see it. And there was other people opening for him. I'm not into, blue, R&B and blues and all this, so I didn't know, but there was some prestigious people at the show. It'd be interesting to go and look up what the specific show was, because you can obviously do that very easily. And then the first band, so when I see a band or I get into a band, I get really into them and I see them a lot, or I see them multiple times. And the first band that I did this with was Bare Naked Ladies.
Oh my fucking God.
But you have to, it's important. So we always talk about looking at things through a modern lens and looking at things through a historic lens. I'm talking about Bare Naked Ladies of Gordon, Born on a Pirate Ship, that era. Maybe You Should Drive. It's a very different band than they've become. And I don't begrudge them what they've become at all. That all began with the 1998 record Stunt and what that song One Week and everything. And I saw them during that era. But my sister Dana and I really bonded, or our sister Dana and I really bonded over Bare Naked Ladies. And she when I was in ninth grade, flew me down to North Carolina, where she lived, from Long Island, as a surprise to bring me to a concert down there. And so we saw them several times, and they were awesome live. They seem to be very different now, not only in their embrace of pop, but that they fired one of the singers, and but I still listen to that record Gordon, especially, which is from 1992. If people are interested, there are a few songs on there that are kill. I mean, that album front to back, I think, is wonderful, but the song Hello City, Grade 9, Enid, I mean, these are amazing songs. So there was them. And then, of course, I fell in love with 311 in the late 90s and ended up seeing 311 30-something times. And what's funny about that is that I saw them 5 times outside of this 7-year window or something like that. So I saw them all in that crazy, you have no responsibility, like late high school, college, early professional life period where you have no responsibilities or fewer responsibilities. And I used to see them 3 or 4 times in a row on a show, like on a tour with Ramon and our friends, our goofy stoner friends. And those shows mean a lot to me. I mean, I truly believe 311 is one of the great live rock acts. I believe that with my whole chest and my whole heart. That's the reason that they still exist today. Their live shows are legendary to people that know. And I highly recommend. They're one of the bands where I think their records are great, but especially the ones from the 90s and early 2000s that I really love, but they are killer live. There's something about rap rock and that kind of reggae and all of that just hits. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I remember going and seeing them once in San Francisco with my friend Jim Riley, who used to do, he was the news guy at IGN. I don't know what happened to him, actually. I haven't talked to him in a few years, but he's around somewhere. And they played the song Brodels, which is just this hard ass rap rock song from the Blue album. And after the song, he leaned into me and he's like, that really hit. And I was like, yes, there's something about this bassy booming music that works so well live and speaks to me. So I saw them a shit ton of times. And then there were the bands that I discovered through seeing 311 that would open for them. And then I would go see or become fans of. So the band Zebrahead, I used to really love. I don't know, Gene, if you remember them. They were very West Coast.
I remember them, but I don't remember listening to them. Yeah.
And they have like a different lineup now and stuff, but they're a band that I really, really loved and I saw several times and discovered through 311. Incubus is another one of those bands. The Incubus opened for 311 during when Science was out, which is an amazing Incubus record, and then when Make Yourself came out, the follow-up. And I saw them for the first time at Jones Beach when they opened for 311 with Two Skinny Jays, another band I really loved.
Oh yeah.
And they were fucking sick. I mean, Incubus changed too. I mean, for better or for worse, whatever. But Science, Make Yourself, and Morning View are incredible records. Absolutely incredible records. And so I saw them a bunch of times too, and discovered them through 311. And then other bands that I loved at the time, like I saw Breaking Benjamin a bunch of times. I loved that band. Their first 2 or 3 records are fucking sick. But Ben Burnley guy or whatever, the singer, who's basically the only original member of the band now, he seems to be interesting because he has fired pretty much everyone over time. But I like that original few records, and I saw them a bunch of times. Dredge, of course, one of my very favorite bands, an amazing live act, art rock, space rock. I've seen them probably 10 times at least alone, and really, really love them. And then there are some others that I was just glad to catch. Like I saw Ben Folds 5, which is awesome because they break up and haven't really been, they were broken up, got back together very briefly, broke up again. I saw Stone Temple Pilots in the original lineup, which is awesome. I saw Journey when they played with Heart and Cheap Trick in Mountain View, California, and it was awesome in like the middle of a field, and it was wild, dude. And oh my god, I fucking love Journey so much. Saw Billy Joel, of course. Everyone from Long Island needs to see Billy Joel at least once. I've seen Elton John, which was pretty cool. I used to see Korn. I saw Korn a few times. I saw Faith No More.
Korn, man. Korn was my shit back in the day.
Korn is great live.
Yeah.
I love new metal, dude. I don't give a fuck. I love new metal.
I love new metal so much.
Yeah, Korn is rad. Like the stuff from the mid to late 90s and even into the 2000s is
even the early 2000s. Y'all want a single C? Fuck that.
Are they done? Is Korn no longer a thing?
No, they're still together,
Oh, okay.
but I think
They're
there's a
still
few
around
different
ish,
members
yeah.
now.
Okay.
That one dude left to start like a Christian metal career.
That's right.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, they were. They used to.
His name was Monkey Head, but it's probably
Monkey, right? Monkey. Yeah.
Monkey.
And then I saw Faith No More, which I was super amped about. Right when they got back together, I was at one of the first shows, which was super exciting. A shout out! I've seen Dave Matthews Band several times, and they're great. I mean, they're fucking great live, and they have a great following. The show is fun. They play really dynamic set lists. That's the great thing about 311 too, is that they'll play all of their songs ultimately. Mm-hmm. If you follow them around enough, you'll hear everything. And when one of your favorite bands is a band like 311, you take that for granted. Because then you see a band like, I love Green Day. I've seen Green Day a few times, and you see Weezer or whatever, and they play the same shit every night. It's like, God damn, that sucks. If you like the band, what is the purpose of seeing them more than once? The fun thing about seeing 311 4 or 5 times in a row is that you might hear 60 songs, in that time, which is cool. Which is cool as hell.
Yeah, I saw Nine Inch Nails in DC, and
I
saw them for 2 nights, and both nights were completely different sets. It was fucking awesome.
See, that's ballsy. I mean, I'm not making fun of these arena productions, but they're so tied in to playing a certain way and doing a certain thing. It's got to be repeatable, and it's got to be like, we got to do this at this time, blah, blah, blah. And I know that that's not ideal for the bands, but they kind of signed that. That's why when I saw Green Day for the first time, I was disappointed because it was during the American Idiot tour. And I actually think American Idiot's a good record, but it's like, damn, dude, do you remember you have anything else? Are you just going to play the whole fucking album? And they played the whole album. And then they played like two things. They played like Basket Case and King for a Day or something. Like, all right, good night.
Yeah, I saw them during the 21st Century Breakdown one, and I didn't really like that album. So I'm like, God damn it, man! It's a Justin Timberlake's "Man in the Woods" problem. I was like, all he was fucking singing was from "Man of the Goddamn Woods,"
And then I had a shout out. I was gonna say, like, I've seen a bunch of rap shows, but I don't think hip hop translates very well live. I try to avoid it. Like I like the Roots live and stuff like that, like things that are a little more musical. I love hip hop so much, and it shines most on record, in my opinion. So like I try to avoid that, especially as I've gotten older, because I don't have the patience for it anymore. And then I wanted to call out the awful venue, which is Berkeley in California.
Oh.
The Greek theater there, at least in my experience, this might have changed. I highly doubt it. Has sound ordinances, and you can literally be in the pit in that place and hear whatever anyone's saying. It's like it's like watching a band where no one gives a shit.
That's
because
odd.
Even like there's, unless people are obviously really engaged, but during an opening act, the chatter is like as if it's totally impartial. Like it's very weird. People play very low there, and I've seen multiple shows there, and I'd be curious to know if anyone has had that experience too. I saw 311 there. I saw the Roots there. I saw Incubus there. I saw Stone Temple Pilots. Show I saw was there. Unfortunately, it was great. I mean, they fucking killed. I mean, you're gonna come out and play fucking Cracker Man, and you think I'm not gonna shit myself? You think you're gonna play Sex Type Thing, and I'm not gonna go off? You can play it on an acoustic guitar for all I care. But I had to say that I saw 4 or 5 shows there that I was like, damn, dude, it's unfortunate. But when STP came through or whatever, I was like, well, that's where they're playing. I feel like bands that I followed ultimately started avoiding that place because they had to keep it kind of low. And that sucks, because the thing I love most about concerts is how fucking loud it is. Shout out to that. Shout out to how just ridiculous it is. And ear piercing. It's awesome. Live music's the best. Dustin, where are you on this? I'm interested to hear. You're a music fan of live music. I'm curious to hear about your travails.
Yeah. Well, being a Furman, the show experience is a quintessential part of it, and has been my whole life. My mom has told me that she went, she was going to concerts when I was in the womb, seeing bands like Goo Goo Dolls in 93.
Wow.
And I think she also saw, I don't know if this was before I would have been conceived, but I know she saw Guns N' Roses on tour with Metallica.
Sick.
This was during the Black album that she was like second row for and stuff like that. So, as long as I've been alive, we've been going to concerts. Even when they would take me when I was just a wee little toddler to different concerts. And for me, it always felt like home because my dad, growing up when I was little, was in bands and some decently successful bands for their scene. The one band was a Christian metalcore band that I'll put that album on sometimes because it's still really awesome. So we were always at, local concerts or going to Pittsburgh or different places, either to see shows or because my dad was playing in them. And so we were always in that scene. And then me in, probably about, I think the first time I performed in a local show was when I was in 8th grade. And that was kind of my thing from 8th grade to 11th grade, was being in bands and playing in local shows and stuff like that. But so that was a huge thing was all that. But of course, the attending concerts as well was huge. And it's fun to look back and think about the bands I've seen and the bands I've seen the most. I was trying to figure out what band I've seen the most, and it's either Thrice, which of course the Sacred Symbols audience know I've seen them a million times. I'm going to see them in Baltimore at the end of the month. They're doing an anniversary tour for an album I really like.
That's the one with the song that I like on it, right?
Yeah, with Silhouette.
That song fucking kicks ass, dude. Dude. Just the beginning of that, just before the vocals even come in, I love it.
Yeah. So they're doing a tour for that. I'm really excited. So the other big thing that comes to mind for me, and I'm curious if you guys also have experienced anything like this, but growing up, a huge part of my high school summers was my church would go to this music festival in Illinois, like Southern Illinois, in the middle of nowhere, called Cornerstone. And this was a Christian music festival, but don't think contemporary Christian music. This wasn't like Stephen Curtis Chapman or something like that. This was the underground Christian scene where you have death metal bands metal bands and some bigger acts too. Like they would have, these bands like Under Oath, Devil Wears Prada was another band that really came to prominence through something like Cornerstone. But what was so cool about this event was we would go and you're basically camping for a week with your friends and staying up until 2 a.m. because they have multiple stages going till 2 a.m. every night. You sleep basically until it's too hot in your tent at about 7:30, 8 a.m. And you do that for 6 days straight. You basically want to die at the end because you've just been in 95. Sometimes I think the one year it was 105, maybe 110-ish outside. And you're just, they have showers and stuff like that, but it doesn't even matter. You can shower and then by 11 a.m. you're already completely sweaty. But this was such a fun time for me, just going and being able to see all these bands that I loved so much every year that we were going to this festival. And so I'm curious if anyone in the audience went to this festival called Cornerstone. It is no longer around, which is really sad. We got to go to the last one, I think, was maybe the summer that I graduated high school. So it was this really sad swan song to my teenage years at that time. But as far as some modern concerts, I was thinking, I couldn't think of like the worst concert I've been to, but the strangest concert I've probably been to, there's two. I went with my mom to both of these. One of them just because I thought it'd be fun and it was $15. And the other one because I actually wanted to. The $15 one was New Kids on the Block with Jesse McCartney opening up. And let me tell you, the New Kids on the Block show, not too bad. It was a fun time.
NKOTB?
Yeah, exactly. Now, ironically, the flip side of this was also New Kids on the Block, again with my mom, but it was with Backstreet Boys. Let me tell you guys, Backstreet Boys still fucking rips. I still put on some of that, I'll go to Apple.
Larger Than Life?
dude, Larger Than Life,
Hell yeah, dude, I love that
Shape
song.
of My Heart. I love all the Backstreet Boys hits, and I still listen to them every once in a while. I'll put on the Apple Music has the like essentials, amazing stuff. I love that. So I saw them
Yeah, boy bands are
together
good.
with New Kids on the Block with my mom, and that was a great time. But
Sick.
when I think about, I've seen tons of great big artists. I've seen Paul McCartney a few times. I saw a few years ago, I saw Jay-Z.
Oh, cool.
All kinds of cool bands. But I gotta say, the best overall experience was Iron Maiden. And this was pretty recent, the 2 times. I've seen them 3 times now, but the 2 recent times, I love the showmanship. You know, sometimes certain bands, you just want to hear the music. And it's hard because these, bands have to juggle the live show and the musicianship at the same time. And sometimes the balance isn't quite right. Maybe the show is a little too flashy and then the music suffers for it. Or maybe there's just great music, but it kind of gets old. Like there's nothing going on or something like that. Iron Maiden, they got crazy shit going on practically every song. They've got a giant blow up fighter plane that goes on during Aces High that flies above them.
Love it.
There's a song where Bruce, the lead singer, has not 1, but 2 flamethrowers that he's like during Flight of the Icarus. So there's, flames and stuff going on. So they were just, and that's the thing, is that they're doing all this crazy stuff. These dudes are, well into their 60s and they're not missing a single note. They are still 10 out of 10, amazing. And what's so cool about this last time I saw them last October was my dad paid for the Iron Maiden fan club subscription, which I think is like, I don't know, it's like maybe $100 a year. You get a bunch of perks. But one of them is that if you have floor tickets, you can get early access. It's called First to the Gate, and you can win that. Well, we won. We were part of the group. They got to go very first in line. So we were practically at the front of the concert in a giant sold out. I don't know if it was quite sold out. It looked sold out, full arena, which is just something I never thought I'd even be able to do, because I remember, obviously it depends on the artist and the demand, but the 3 times I saw Paul McCartney, I was in the nosebleeds and I spent a lot of money just for the chance to go. Looking at the floor seats for that, you're talking multiple thousands of dollars in order to just even be slightly close. So to be at the very front at an arena show was just totally awesome and sold me for life that, some of these bands that you love or these artists aren't going to be around forever. So you feel like you got to see them as many times as you can before they go. I still, the main artist that I really want to see live that I haven't yet is Kendrick Lamar, who I'm not, there are a lot of rap artists that I really like, but I don't consider myself ingrained with that scene. But I've always been a big fan of Kendrick Lamar, and he's still around, but I haven't got a chance to see him yet. The biggest regret, the concert that I wish, or the tour that I wish I could have seen and is now just never going to happen, is Daft Punk. When they did a tour, there's an album for the tour called the Alive. I think it was Alive 2007. And you can see it happened right when people were starting to have phone cameras or maybe like a flip video. So all the videos of it are really shitty on YouTube, but it looks amazing. They had this giant pyramid on stage. And what was so cool about that album, if you listen to it, is that they're doing their songs, but they are remixing them together. So they'll have 2 or 3 Daft Punk songs combined in a way that creates basically an entire new song in a way that feels really cool.
Incredible stuff.
Yeah. And now they're just broken up. So, and they didn't even tour on the last album they did 10 years ago now, which is crazy that Random Access Memories came out that way.
That was a really
I
awesome
was really
record.
hoping they would tour for that one, and that would be the one I would see. But
Yeah.
and it would have been great because there's live music in it.
Yeah, it would have been perfect. And it seems like the only time they performed those songs live were at the Grammys,
At the
maybe,
Grammys,
which
yeah,
that's
with Pharrell, you know.
yeah, which was an awesome performance. But it's
That
not
dude from The Strokes that did that song.
Yeah,
with
Julian
them?
Casablancas.
Yeah, he played that. Like, there's live versions of that from like when he would play too, which is cool because I love that song. Cool. So I just know that those exist, but it was not Daft Punk. You know, it was him on tour playing with a band, which was good. But
yeah, it sucks when artists go away, and that's I mentioned artists not being around forever. That was the thing with me and Paul McCartney now, is that it's like anytime he's around, I'm gonna go for sure. Just because, even not that it's like he will die eventually, but eventually he may decide he just doesn't want to do it anymore.
He may have died decades ago.
That's absolutely possible too, man. If he did, whoever they got to replace him, impressive, because he's just as good in a lot of ways. But yeah, I was trying to think. I think that about covers it. Right now the concerts I have coming up, I mentioned thrice, but July 4th weekend, I think it's July 5th, I'm seeing Yellow Card do the Ocean Avenue 20-year anniversary tour.
That reminds me of late high school, that record. Yeah.
So I'm excited about that. I've never seen them before, and that's what's weird, is that for me, my alternative music era was probably between 2006 and 2012. So all of those bands now are doing these anniversary tours, whether it's, I saw Relient K do an anniversary tour for their 10-year, and now it's almost the 20-year. So I hope that they do that for their big album. But it's just, I love going to shows. I will never be bored of it. I just want to go all the time. And I've always wanted to go see bands I don't even care about as much. I've always joked that like a few years back, I wish I would have gone. There was it was only like $10 or $15, and I could have saw Creed. And I don't even really like them, but I think it would have been a really fun, like, weird show to go to.
They got back together, and
cool.
that was one of the shows that there are some things I regret, but that is one I guess I kind of do, because they did get back together after Alter Bridge was founded, and then they did that little tour, and I should have seen them, because I think Creed's first few records are great. Like that. I love everything through Weathered. I had all that stuff. I like that stuff. That song, What If? I love that song so much.
Colin, I gotta say one more thing I just thought of.
Yeah.
Thinking about bands I never got to see, and I know this one will be near and dear to your heart, is Linkin Park.
Yeah.
And that was especially painful. I mean, after the death of Chester, and obviously there's people hurting a lot more than me from his death. But I was
obviously, you say it as a fan. Who cares? I mean, it's
I'm
okay.
I'm sad. I never ended up seeing them, and I know that they were incredible live. And if they do it again at some point, I know they've done a few different shows kind of in honor of him. But it just, when you have a singer is so connected to the music for that long, it would not be the same.
Yeah, what's interesting is that he was not originally a member, and the basically record label kind of added him to the band, and then he became kind of the ingredient that they needed to push over the edge. And it is sad. It's a bummer too, and how that affects Stone Temple Pilots. I was bummed as well.
Yeah.
Although they've moved on since too. So yeah, there's so many things that I wish I got to see or took advantage of, but I must say that I was very lucky at Northeastern, and people that know geography in Boston will know that's right near where Fenway is, and right outside of Fenway, at least, were 5 or 6 venues that had shows 5 or 6 days a week. And Ramon and me and a bunch of our friends, we used to go to these fucking shows all the time. I used to just go see concerts all the time. And you'd go to this place to see this, and it would be this house party where this hardcore band is playing, and this VW, this Veteran Hall or whatever, where this guy. Just saw so many bands. This band, I saw Dredge at a Strawberries music store. I saw Phantom Planet at Newberry Comics. So I would just go see anything, and that's what it kind of reminds me of. Dig, where are you on this? And Gene has about 25 minutes, by the way, until he has a hard out, so we'll be mindful of that.
Sure.
Well.
Mine won't take long. You guys are the musical. You guys are encyclopedic. First of all, intimidating concert resumes. I have to say, it's very impressive. Gene, I have to say to you, You've brought up Almost Famous and Cameron Crowe a couple of times. I wonder if we could get you to do the Almost Famous episode of Knockback with us, because it's a movie that means a lot to me. Cameron Crowe, Lester Bang. My wife loves the movie too, but I'll never get her to do another episode of Knockback. So you may be the next best thing to do.
You got it for E.T., which is a good one, but it's
E.T. was a good one.
I have to watch that one, but yeah, for sure, sounds good. I haven't watched that movie in decades. So.
I would love that. I would love to do that with you. And the other thing, I have a follow-up question for you guys. Not being a boy band aficionado, is NSYNC and Backstreet Boys sort of this Coke Pepsi, you love one and hate the other type thing, or is it not like that?
They have different flavors. Backstreet Boys is more like melodic and like 90s, like they're probably closer to like Boyz II Men and that era, whereas NSYNC had this like harder raw edge. That's the Justin Timberlake group, right?
Oh, that's right. He's out of that.
They were a little bit edgier. They were a little bit more aggressive on their pop.
All right. So not okay. Well,
the
I
most
have
aggressive
three.
Backstreet Boys got was when they declared Backstreet's back. All right, I was like, okay, guys, calm down.
This shouldn't take long. I thought of 3 bullet points when Dustin sent over this topic. My favorite concert story of all time has nothing to do with me. It has to do with our mom, which Colin knows this story. And ironically, it's a concert that didn't happen. Our mom was supposed to be at the Shea Stadium Beatles concert in 1965 and got grounded. And my grandparents made her miss it. And it's interesting, if I look back at the history, we're talking about August 65, I believe. So our mom was just short of turning 15. And I think the concert tickets were a 15th birthday present from my great grandparents, who lived all together, all 5 of them in the house. Or there was my twins were born, my mom's sisters were born, our aunts were born at that point. So it was all of them in the house. And I think my mom, judging from history, was a relatively good kid, happened to just come home, miss curfew the weekend before. It just hit a nerve with my grandparents and they made her miss the concert. So she wasn't there for that iconic 56,000 person teenage girls screaming their head off performance. Well, I think that I just read recently that was the biggest musical performance up to that point ever in terms of attendance, which I never knew.
Yeah, and it's important. Yeah. Just important context is that our mom grew up in Nassau County, in Albertson near Mineola, and Shea Stadium's like right in the backyard, basically there. And Shea Stadium was brand new, so it was a big, like the Mets were an expansion team, so that it was a big deal in that area. That's why she had even any connectivity to that show at all. So it's just happenstance that Shea Stadium happened to be the shit, in Queens at that time.
And you're right. They were in the shadow of Flushing. And yeah, I know it's interesting thinking back. I wish I got my grandparents' perspective on it and got to ask them about it. But by the time they both passed away, it just never occurred to me to get their side of the story. But my heart always broke for my mom. And she told us that story from such a young age because we knew how big the Beatles were, if we didn't understand the dynamics of the entire tale. But I always thought that was so funny that she was supposed to be at one of the world's most famous concerts and she missed it because I think it was the one time she got grounded as a kid. And I think she was saying they grounded her like 4 or 5 days before the concert. And she was just hoping with every passing day that they would thaw out a little bit and she could kind of cajole them but they never let up and she stayed home. So I thought that was always interesting. And then for myself personally, I have a good one and a really good one and a really weird one. I never really got to that many concerts as a kid. I think part of it was because by the time I was 12-ish, I became really into hip hop to the detriment of liking anything else probably for years. Like I was really a hip hop kid. And so I saw some shows, but even then I didn't go to too many concerts or shows. And then the other thing, I'll be honest with you guys, and this might be because I'm just not a musician in any sense of the word. I spent years not wanting to go to concerts because I got frustrated that didn't sound like the version of the track that I liked. I didn't want the live music or, God forbid, unplugged version of I would get frustrated that it didn't sound like the album version. And I spent years, like, I don't know my sisters, for instance, going to concerts, be like, what's the point? Like, it's not going to sound like And it wasn't probably until my late 20s where I was really on board to attend more concerts. So that definitely held me back a little bit. But my coolest concert story, I was living in Philly at the time, putting myself through school, working retail. I was working at Urban Outfitters at the time. And it was the flagship store for Urban. For a lot of people that don't know, Urban and Anthropologie are out of Philadelphia. And I was working at the flagship store downtown in Philly, Center City, Rittenhouse Square. And I would get a lot of people in there. We would get a lot of celebrities when they were in town shopping in there, and a lot of VIPs would come through. And inevitably, I got to know a lot of people that promoted clubs and raves and concerts in the city. They would come in and shop. A lot of that, thinking back, it's kind of funny. A lot of that group of people were gay guys that used to just hit on me all the time, which was fine. It was actually kind of fun, and it was kind of funny. They were always harmless. They never went too far, but I formed a lot of relationships and made a lot of friendships through that kind of dynamic. And there was one guy that would come in and sort of give me a hard time and break my chops and that type of thing. And one day he came in and he knew I was a big hip hop guy, and he was like, "Do you like De La Soul?" Not realizing that De La Soul is probably my favorite musical act of all time. De La Soul is my equivalent to Colin's 311. You know, that's just my end all be all musically. And I said, "Yeah, of course." And he said, "Well, they're playing at a little bar up in University City in West Philly tomorrow night." And automatically alarm bells went off, because I knew the big or the bigger event spaces / concert venues in Philly, you know, the 5 Spot at that time, Shampoo, the Troc, Electric Factory, whatever. And it was none of those places. So I was like, what is De La Soul doing playing this little mom and pop bar up in West Philly? And I was dubious. And I didn't know if I believed him or not, but I wasn't going to risk it. And nobody wanted to go with me. I couldn't find anyone to go with me that night. So eventually my friend's girlfriend, who I also worked with at the store, actually said, "You know what, I'll take a cab ride up to West Philly with you. We'll check it out. Hopefully it turns out to be true." It turned out to be completely true. De La Soul was playing this tiny venue. I mean, if there were 100 people there, I'd be surprised. And they did a full set and then sat at the bar, and I got to chill with them and talk to them. And, "Oh, you're from Long Island." We, you know, just small talk and chatter and stuff like that. Super cool. Whole thing turned out to be true. Whole thing turned out to be free. That was probably my best musical experience of my life. Especially now, I get emotional about it, losing Trugoy, who died earlier this year. De La Soul will never play, even if Mason and Paz keep going. It's never going to be the trio again.
De La Soul is dead.
De La Soul truly is dead.
Yes, well said.
So I got, and they're the act, PS, that I got to see the most. And I only saw them probably 5 or 6 times in total between Philly and New York. Did I see them in LA? I might have seen them in LA too. But they're the one that I've seen the most. And again, my concert resume is comparatively tiny to you guys, but the other concert experience that I'll never forget. So the De La show, that was probably 97. This next one was up in Connecticut. It was probably 99. It's probably the summer of 99. We found out, my friends and I up there found out that there was going to be this hair metal reunion concert. Poison was headlining. And then...
Dude, a Butler native.
Oh, are they really?
The singer, Brett Michaels.
Brett Michaels? Get out of here.
Yep.
I didn't know he was even from
He's a legend around here.
What? Well, this story will largely involve Brett. Every rose has its thorn, Michaels. And I think who was opening up for them, Rat, who I was a big fan of as a kid, LA Guns, and I want to say the other one was Cinderella. So me and my friends my age that grew up with the hair metal were pretending to ironically be smitten, but we were legit excited for this concert. It was an outdoor venue out on the lawn of this big outdoor concert space outside of Hartford. And we ended up, I don't know what happened that night. We lived in the suburbs, so it took us a while to get in. Well, it turns out we missed LA Guns and Cinderella completely. I was really looking forward to Rat, and I think we came on their last song. We finally got in and got a seat on the lawn. And I was already pissed. And then Poison comes on, and Brett Michaels there was already a very contentious thing going on with Bret Michaels specifically and the security, this venue security. And it only got worse as time went on, to the fact that Bret Michaels just stopped performing and was yelling at security for what probably turned out to be 6, 7, 8 songs that he could have done. And while he was fighting with security, quite vocally, he was egging on the audience to do the same thing, where it almost got to be a riot type atmosphere. Now, I had never been to a rock concert before at all. Luckily, it was an outdoor venue, because I think I would have been terrified if I was indoors. And the entire thing turned out to be this really sort of profanity-laden tirade against security that I think got physical, not only with fans and security, but I think part of Bret Michaels' security started fighting. Actually, a physical altercation sort of broke out between Bret Michaels' roadies / security and the security of this Hartford outdoor venue concert space. And it was kind of upsetting, because it was packed. I mean, there was thousands of people, and there was really no way out. Like, if something was going to happen, if something dangerous was going to pop off and it was going to affect everybody, there would have been no way out of there. So that was I remember everybody being in a really bad mood that night going home, because we were looking forward to this fun thing, ended up missing 3/4 of it. And then the 1/4 that we caught was just not even a performance. It was just Bret Michaels lashing out against the security. I remember his VH1 show came out not too long after that. And I remember, I think he was trying to sell himself as this warm and fuzzy aging rocker during that time. It was only a couple years past, that event that I had seen. And I remember just calling bullshit on it. And being a Poison fan, I was a little bit heartbroken. I was especially heartbroken to have missed Rat, because I really liked Rat growing up. But that was my one opportunity to see Poison, and it didn't happen. I think my wish list for concerts is a lot longer than the stuff I've actually seen. I would have loved to have seen like 1979 era Kiss, just growing up. A Gen Xer growing up as a huge Kiss fan. The Supremes, which I missed with Diana Ross, which I missed by miles. That would have never happened. I think Duran Duran would have been really cool. That's Kyle. You never saw Duran Duran?
No, I haven't. They still play, and they play, and I watched actually, because what I was gonna say was YouTube is a great, like, one of the things I do on YouTube more than almost anything is watch concert footage. Just tons of it, from historical and current. I just watch so much concert footage, and Duran Duran fucking rocks live. I've said before that Duran Duran's, especially the bass line in Duran Duran songs, are nuts, and they're just really, really, really solid still. So I never did get to see them, no.
Yeah, they're an arena act. I guess they always have been. Very poppy music, very appealing. I would have loved to see an INXS. I would love to go to South by Southwest and just see, the alternative music acts. I would love to go see Fantagram and Metric and School of Seven Bells. I mean, there's a lot. I should probably make a little more effort into.
Oh, I see Metric. They rule.
Oh, you have?
Yeah,
that really must be a good show. Mm-hmm. They got a nice combination between alternative and being able to rock an arena. I feel like they're anthemic. So they would be a bigger one for me. Wu-Tang. I don't know how I've never seen Wu-Tang. I've been an avid fan since '93 of everything mainline and solo. Almost everything I love. Never seen Wu-Tang. And the Sundays is my other big one. They're a band that's kind of a deep cut, but one of my favorite bands of all time. Probably only existed for 6 years before they went away. 3 albums. By the mid to late 90s, they were done. And I had a ticket. They probably only toured North America twice. I had a ticket in my hand and gave it to somebody else. And they broke up. Like the next year, I think by 94, they were completely dissolved. And so that's a miss for me, because I don't think the Sundays, I think we could safely say the Sundays are never getting back together.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's still good business for a lot of these older bands
to
get back together. The only thing that I've avoided in my concert going is Dustin was saying how he enjoyed going to that one festival. I've avoided multi-day festivals like the plague. Like there was nothing. I could have gone to Bonnaroo a bunch of times, especially because like Humphreys McGee and a bunch of bands there that I love and have seen or wanted to see were playing. And 311 played Powwow Festival where they played Transistor all the way through, which was like a huge deal. And I'm like, there's just no way.
Don't go. I've been to Coachella. It fucking sucks.
No,
man.
I was like, there's just no way that I give a fuck enough about any of this to do that. But I have gone one day to some festivals, you know, like I went to the first Outside Lands, for instance, in San Francisco, and that was like Tom Petty and Steve Winwood, and it was like dope, you know.
That's cool.
Cake played that, Dredge was there, and so I that kind of whole like you're in for a weekend. The only, and I'm dead up about this, the only one that I'm kind of interested in, or was, it's because I think the Renaissance or like the golden era of it is long over, is Gathering of the Juggalos. Not because I'm an ICP fan, because I'm not. Like I think some ICP stuff's good, but that I've seen a few documentaries and I'm like, this looks so fucking
American
interesting.
Juggalo,
you know,
right? On YouTube, American Juggalo.
Yeah, that might be one. Yeah, one of them. I think I saw it on even
That's
Netflix or Amazon. One of them. It was the one where the guy was like smashing another guy in the head with a stop sign. There's like what, like to see like whose head was stronger or whatever. Anyway, I've always been interested in it, but just like kind of. As a music fan and sociologically and stuff, it just seems very interesting, very chill, very white trash, you know? There's something fascinating about it.
I never attended the ICP concert, but I have attended the Insane Clown Posse March of the Juggalos on Washington, when the Juggalos gathered here in Washington, D.C. to protest the FBI's categorization of them as some kind of terrorist organization.
Right. And it worked, right?
Damn.
I think it did work, yeah.
Yeah, like because that's
ridiculous. I met a bunch of Juggalos, and they were lovely, peaceful.
They are.
Like,
they're supposed to be really good
people.
Folks. Yeah.
You know, I saw Violent J, and like I think I'm in some news coverage where I'm like, Violent J, oh my god, you know.
Yeah, that's awesome that you covered that, because I do remember that, like vaguely, them having some sort of political presence, because that's unfair. Like they are just doing their own thing. People judge it. And that's fine. And you might not like the music. I really don't. I mean, I think they had that one, what was it, like The Great Malenko or whatever? That came out when I was in like 8th or 9th grade, and people loved it. I mean, people earnestly loved that record, and then everyone pretended they didn't anymore. I don't know much more about their discography than that, but I do know that what's remarkable about it, and I think what the documentaries kind of get to the heart of, is like there's no violence here. There's like no one's hurting each other, doing anything wrong. They clean up after themselves. I remember there's like, that's one part of the documentary, is like how they stay behind and clean up everything. And I was like, I don't know, doesn't seem, so I've always been interested in checking that out, but I kind of missed the golden period of it. I think it's in the middle of Kentucky or something every year, which is cool. So
they have a day here at the local theme park at Kennywood. It's unofficial Gathering of the Juggalos at Kennywood. And I've heard that they're not allowed to wear face paint.
Oh,
and Kennywood hates it. But they can't stop these people all from coming here on this one day. I've always wanted to go on that day.
Yeah, you should.
I don't even care about riding any rides. I just want to be there and observe the situation at this theme park.
The Juggalo. Yeah, so the face paint's awesome. Like that they walk, because I love that kind of stagecraft too. Not so much them, but I know Dagan loved Kiss, and the trifecta of like Slipknot, Mudvayne, and Mushroomhead when I was a kid. I really loved those bands, and that kind of stagecraft of having a mask or an alter ego. I dig that, but I want to be mindful. Gene, I know you have to go, so what we'll do now is we'll stop recording, and then the three of us will come back and finish the show without you, but I want to let you go. You have to do a PBS interview. It's much more important than this.
Okay, I do want to say before I leave, I do recommend to the audience to look up, since we're talking about disastrous concert videos, look up Color Me Bad and the Pushing Incident. I think in 2018, there's only 2 members left of Color Me Bad, and one of them has a raging alcohol problem. So when they were playing at a casino in, I think, Tier, New York, the other guy was like, "Hey, get off the stage, man! Like you can't sing and dance. You know, you can't perform." And then the one guy ended the whole concert. So it was Color Me Bad with just one guy, and he finished the song, the famous hit song, "I Want to Sex You Up," and it went, "I want to sex you up." And then the other guy comes on stage and just fucking shoves him.
Yes, I'm looking it up now. Fight on Stage comes up when look it up. We'll see if we can overlay this.
Yeah. But like he shoves him super hard, and then the other Color Me Bad, the guy who's a shover, got arrested for assault.
What? Damn.
Yeah,
So-
I'm looking at the footage here. Yeah, there's some footage if you want to look through that, Dustin. I'll leave that up to you.
Yeah, for sure.
But
Right.
Gene, we appreciate you. Sorry we went a little bit over time. Go do your other thing now, and we'll be right back. Okay, we had to say goodbye to Gene because he had what is called the heart out.
The heart out in the biz.
He had to go do a PBS interview. It's probably going to be live before this is live, so hopefully you check that out. All right, let's do a final musically related topic. Dustin, it's your turn to go. Please hit us with it.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you guys about how you listen to music. And I realized I sent that email last night, and I think I was a little bit too broad. But I specifically wanted to ask, like, when you listen to music, now and before in your past, and the devices that we used, because I mentioned earlier about the medium is the message, right? And it's fascinating to me to think about how, even in just my lifetime, how much things have changed with music. And there was so many changes before my time as well, and there continues to be changes. And so I guess to start off as an example is that I remember since I was a baby, again, my dad, I mentioned being the lover of music and going to concerts. Being born in 1993, it was well into the CD era. And my dad was known for having this massive CD collection, well over 1,000 CDs. We have downstairs where my video game collection is now, he built these shelves that were custom designed for his CDs, right? And so I remember very specifically this era of the CD and how that impacted how you listen to music. So in the car, my parents had that thing that was a Velcro strap. It went on the thing that blocks out the light. The whatever. What is that thing called?
Visor.
You know? The visor.
Visor.
And it would hold maybe 10 CDs in it. And so you could have that in your car. So you had access to a bunch of different albums that you could switch out. My dad, being the savage he was, not only had one for his side, but the passenger side as well. So you could have double the amount on car trips where we would have, I don't know, 20, 25 CDs locked in in the car. And I also think about, you had people that had an entire book. They kept their CDs in the booklet that you would
That's
go through.
Yeah.
So it's fun thinking about that era from that perspective, and just that the CDs itself, but how we also changed at the birth of the MP3 player with the iPod, where you think about before all of our times, where it was all about the single, having the one song, and then maybe eventually you'd have the album, but the album was often a collection of the singles. And then with CD, it suddenly became much more about the album and having the full album, and you would listen to, or, most people would listen to all of it. And when you were in the car, or if you had a CD player Walkman or something like that, unless you were listening to a greatest hits or a collection of some kind, you were committed to listening to the whole thing. And I feel like that's lost in some ways now. Maybe it's better. I don't know if streaming has helped or hurt this, but when the iPod came out, everything changed, where people were doing the 99-cent songs. You no longer needed to buy the whole album from this pop artist you liked. You could buy just the single, and which at the time maybe was beneficial, because you'd have these bands or these artists that maybe had a one or two hit wonder or something, and they would put out the album and it was just all stinkers except for those two songs you wanted. And so you kind of had that freedom. And then now, of course, with streaming, there's whatever you want on demand at any time. But I have to talk about too, just the iPod and MP3 players, because I remember how cool that was, and how I feel like I missed out on this moment in time, because the first iPod I ever had was in 2009 when I got the iPod Touch. So I missed out on the scroll wheel iPod. All my friends had them, but my dad was the type of guy that was so function over everything. Oh, you can get an MP3 player that's not made by Apple that does the exact same thing. You know, we had I think the brand was called Creative. They had one, Creative Zen. Had one of those. That thing fucking sucked. It never worked. Trying to sync it with stuff. I think my mom had a Zune at one point, and everyone knows about the nightmare that was the Zune. So it was kind of sad thinking back to that time. And I can even remember my first MP3 player didn't even have, you couldn't scroll around and select the artist or the album. It was one playlist, just one. And so you would put all these songs on it. I think mine could hold maybe 120 or something like that. And I would remember, it's like, okay, Meteora starts at track 83. So if you want to listen to Meteora, you gotta click, 83 times to get to that part in the playlist, and then you could listen to that before you go to bed or whatever. Pretend that you're sad or something like that, like you're really feeling the lyrics or whatever. And then if you want to listen to, Reliant K or whatever, you go to track 105, and it was pain in the butt. But now too, and that's why I said this is a little broad, so you guys can really take it wherever you want, but I really love the state of my own musical listening, in that it's nice that I have enough production work that I listen to music every day when I'm getting Patreon posts ready or getting the thumbnail ready. It's like a really nice time that, especially with streaming music, it's whatever you want. You can listen to, check new stuff out, and it's no risk. It's not like going to the store and taking a risk on an album, which can also be fun in its own way. But so there's all of that available. But as a lot of the audience knows, I'm also a huge fan of vinyl and the physical aspect of albums. And I love the resurgence of that, because again, it comes to this idea of how we listen to music, and that there are times when you just want to play something. You want to be able to quickly get it and maybe hop around or whatever. But I love that the ritual of vinyl is still around, where you pick an album and you put it down, and you can just let it play, and maybe you can clean or do something or whatever, but it's only going to last for about 25 minutes before it demands your attention again to get up and flip it over. So vinyl is like this very active listening experience, which for me, and I know this has been a reoccurring theme on Constellation, this idea about our attention and trying to do just one thing. I love that aspect of it, where it's like, man, if I'm going to listen to this, I'm making a commitment where we're going to do this. We're going to flip it over, and maybe I'll do a little bit of something else, but I find it's the most satisfying when I can just sit and listen. So Colin, I know that you say hours a day. I know that you're an active gym listener when you're working out and stuff like that, but I'm just curious about where music, how you consume it, when you do, and a little bit of history with that.
Yeah, I these days I have my we were talking about Apple, and people get mad, but it's like Apple makes amazing products, and the
AirPods Pro are fucking awesome.
Are awesome.
Yes.
And I have my watch coming today, actually, my very first.
Oh, nice.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I want it mostly for like tracking my fitness stuff, like it just kind of tracks your heart rate and, your calories and your distance and all. I don't know. It's useful. Micah really likes her, so she sold me on that. So that should be coming today, and I'll be truly in the Apple world again. I don't know. It's fine. I like Apple, but so I when I wake up in the morning, I usually listen. I put my earbuds in usually and like listen to some music and dick around my phone or whatever. And I listen to music when I work out, and I usually listen to music. Like I'll put my earbuds in as loud as possible, and then I'll put my headphone, like my noise canceling headphones over them, and then I'll play drums along to the songs. So I do that, and I often play, when I'm listening to where I'm playing mindless games, like I'm playing Forspoken right now, which is just a lot. It's fine, but it's just a lot of running around and doing things. I'm just listening to music while I'm doing that. So I'm always kind of digesting music, but I do, especially when I work out, I have a much more like schizophrenic. Like I'll skip like 10 songs in a row on my Spotify.
Oh yeah,
I'm like,
I do that when I'm in the car.
No. Yeah, it's I don't know. Sometimes Michael will say that she's like, I can tell if if you're very patient or if you're impatient or something, depending on how you kind of let your music flow while you're working out. Because sometimes I'll just be like, I'm totally committed to just listening. And it'll even be a challenge. Like I'm listening to the next 10 songs, whatever they are. And sometimes I'm just like, I can't find anything I want to listen to, and I'll just not listen to anything at all. My history with it though is I had a tape player, like a cassette stereo when I was probably 1989, 1990, when I was like 5 or 6, my mom got for me. And then I had, as I got older, when Green Day's Dookie came out, so that was 1994, I was 10, I got a portable tape player. And then I got a portable CD player, I think the next year. And then we got a computer. So I used to listen to use a CD-ROM to listen to audio CDs. And then the PlayStation 1 allowed us to listen to CDs on TV, which was cool. And if you had a stereo hooked up to it, which was really, really convenient and nice. And then I got finally like my own CD stereo in high school. And at that time, I was more comfortable with, and my dad was more comfortable with letting me use his really nice stereo in our living room, like a surround sound stereo. And we kid around on Knockback that I would like blast it so loud and play basketball outside. And then like our dad would come around the street, like coming home, and I would run inside to lower it. And then he'd be like, "Why'd you run inside?" And it was always to either shut the heat off or to lower the music.
Or both.
Yeah. And there were a few times where I'm like kind of in a situation where it would look too weird for me to like run home. Like I'd be at Brian's across the street. So for me to get home in time, it would look like I was running like a bat out of hell. And Dad would just see me doing that. So I just would let it ride and hope that he didn't think the music was too loud or the heat was too high. He would always know though. So I would start messing around with those. And then midway through high school and late in high school, MP3 players and the revolution of CDR. And I was kind of at the perfect age of deniability, of like what I would consider authentic deniability of not really knowing or thinking what you're doing, where Napster, created at Northeastern University, came out when I was in 10th grade. And I was all over that bad boy. I was all over that. I was all over WinMX. And
Kazaa? You remember that one?
Kazaa for a little while, yeah. By the time LimeWire came out and like Direct Connect, I was kind of out, you know.
Yeah.
But for me, it was interesting because I was in during that. First of all, I remember going to individual websites and right-click saving MP3s before even peer-to-peer stuff like that. You could still. I remember getting Offspring's Smash and Ixnay on the Ombre digitally by doing that at like some pirated website, and just burning that stuff onto CD, both as a playable audio CD and as later on a lot of car stereos would start reading them as MP3, so you can shove like 100 songs on a CD with like 700 megabytes or whatever space you have doing that, as opposed to 70 minutes of runtime, which was what a CD would have if it was an audio playing CD. So that was kind of for my generation, that was a pretty big revolution in the way people listen to music. And then there were before iPod really even came out or was a thing, there were third-party MP3 players. And my friend Cody, who Dagan knows well, had one, and it was like a 32 megabyte or something like that. And he used to lend it to me when I would go play hockey, and because I was like bored at practice, you know, just doing shooting drills, and I would have it in, and it would only be able to hold like half a record, you know, half an album. And I remember that clear as day. And I got my first iPod pretty late for my generation. I got my first iPod in 2005, which is really late. That's 3 years after they really became popular. I got mine in college. Mom and Dad gave it to me for my birthday, I think in 2005. I asked for it, actually. I was like, "Can you please buy me an iPod?" And they did. And I really appreciated it. And then like 6 months later, I dropped it in the elevator of my building and it broke.
No.
And it just never worked again. And that was the end of that. But then there's that kind of interstitial period where I didn't really have one. And then the smartphone came out. And my first smartphone was the Palm Pre, which I loved. And I had Palm Pre for a few years because I had two of them, and held on for dear life with that phone. And I didn't get an iPhone until 2011. But by that point, you're listening to Pandora. And then finally, Spotify changed everything. And that was, I got Spotify, I think 11 or 12 years ago. And so ever since then, that's the way I've listened to music, is just through subscription. And that's why I really try to interact with the bands I like. And you know, either I used to see a lot of bands live, but buying merch or whatever. And even I have like a relationship with, you know, a friendship with the a working friendship with the bassist in Dredge, where I buy fine art from him, so it's like I'm trying to put my money where my mouth is for the art and the artists that I really touched me or that I really love, as opposed to just having this passive relationship with everything. But it's difficult because I don't understand. There's two things are true. One is that record companies used to make more money, and it was easier to make money on records and get record deals and all of this, but that's not where money was ever really made. And there were a lot of people that struck out. Many more people struck out that way. And so I don't want to make it seem like it's all been a loss to go to Spotify, where people don't make a lot of money on their individual music. But it is true that music is a unique art form, and it's in that it's not only replicable, but it's preferred often being replicated, as opposed to watching or just looking at a painting or the original shot of a TV show or whatever. And so there's a lot of bites at the apple. Then I think, and this is actually something I talked about with Jaffe recently on Sacred Symbols Plus. And so I think that that's an interesting component of music that needs to be taken better advantage of by the bands and the acts themselves, by hitting the road, by having a dynamic merch operation or whatever, and feeding into it so that when someone's into your music, there's a place for them to go with that energy. You have to almost kind of use it to your advantage, but it's certainly not the ideal situation. And it's what I say about Game Pass. Like it doesn't matter if it's profitable or not, or good enough for the economy. If it's good enough value, then people are just going to do it. So it doesn't really matter what the ramifications are. And I've said before that I think Spotify should be by right more expensive than it is. And I wouldn't mind it being more expensive. In fact, I wouldn't mind there being kind of a way to opt into like a much more sophisticated Spotify than just certain features, but to say like we want to give more or whatever as an option. I think that'd be cool.
Yeah.
But
they go that way too.
Yeah. So that's where I am on all that.
You reminded me of something that is related, but I think much after, like, not something you would have been interested in because you weren't a kid. Do you remember, you mentioned the MP3 player that only had half an album, and for some reason it reminded me of hit clips. Do you remember those?
Yeah, Lazy Game Reviews, I think, or someone did something on that. And that's how I discovered it, because I did miss that, and I was like, wow, this is so interesting. Like you get like a little piece of a song like in really low quality.
Yeah.
It's so interesting.
For anyone who doesn't remember those, it came during a time before MP3 players. I was in first grade, I think, and you got a little keychain that was a little chip, and you could put it in a little hit clip device, and it would play like you said, Colin, 45 seconds of a song, and it sounded like complete shit. I think the lowest quality you could possibly put in the song, and it was coming out of a little tiny speaker or a little tiny ear thing. And but at the time, we thought it was so cool that you could have these little versions of songs. And then, man, the MP3 player was just so exciting. I remember when it's like, wait, you can hold multiple albums on this one little thing. That's so cool. And Colin, you mentioned Spotify too. When Spotify first came out, I remember so many people thinking, is this legal? Because this was post Napster, where if a new product arrives from the internet that's telling you can listen to all of this music for free, which of course there was ad supported and there was a paid subscription, but for free, people immediately didn't even believe it, that it was too good to be true, really. And I remember that, but I think that, I don't know, it sucks because you think about how you hear artists say how much money they make per stream, and they really don't make, or unless you're in the top percent of plays, you're really not making that much money from your streams.
Right.
And I don't know, there's positives and negatives. Obviously that's a big negative, but I just think about how it's just another thing with the internet where it is kind of made it so anyone can be successful too. You don't need a big record company in order to release your album on Spotify or Apple Music. You can just do it, and maybe you'll become a big hit, and maybe your money won't come from the sales or the streams, but maybe just the fact that people have that access is going to be enough to skyrocket your tour or whatever. And so it's cool to see the record companies lose some power. Just because you think about how many people and how many musicians have been ripped off. And Colin, you and I have talked about this interesting phenomenon going on right now with artists re-recording their albums to put them out again. Switchfoot just recently did this, which was one of my favorite bands growing up. New version sucks. I hate it. There's auto-tune on it, and you can tell. I don't know if it's just because he's older and wanted to sound the same.
I have never heard a re-recording that I wanted to listen to more than the original ever.
Yeah. At least I will. The only band that I'll give props to, I mentioned earlier, Thrice, their version is live. So it has a different feel to it. It feels like a different thing than just trying to exactly replicate what they did before. It's like, hey, this is us doing what it sounds like when we play this album all together now. So I respect that. But the bands that just kind of do the exact same thing, like, I get it. You're just trying to get out of the rights situation and get your money and all that. But it's not a compelling product to me. No,
exactly. It's interesting because, you understand it, but because I think that it has to be distinct enough from the original too. So like it inherently has to sound differentiated. And every time I encounter one of those, I just get so bummed out, whether it's like PM Dawn and just all these random, it's like, damn, what are you guys doing? Just make the deal. This is what you're known for. You're known for that version of the song. And unfortunately, that's just the way it goes. And it sucks because I love musicians and they're not respected enough for what they do. I don't think, and paid enough for what they do. But that's why, unfortunately, Spotify showed the breaking point, and certainly the Apple Store, like iTunes itself, was a game changing thing. But that was the record labels coming, and the industry coming to terms with what would be the new economy, whether they went with it or not. But what's so interesting about Spotify's power is that everyone had to buy in. Otherwise it wouldn't have worked, and you all bought in, Right. So,
yeah. So Dagan, I'm curious for you. Are you jamming albums all day long while animating? Because I feel like that's like the ultimate job, to either listen to podcasts or music. Because I'm not an animator, so maybe I'm totally wrong, but that's something where it's just, okay, I need to make this object look nice going from point A to point B. And it's going to be a process that isn't mindless, because that makes it sound like there's no talent. But you know what I mean? You just got to do the process.
Yeah.
And so,
especially being home. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, music is a big part of it. I listen to my music, most of my music, 99% is probably via YouTube, just because of convenience, which I get a little embarrassed about, because Helene has her Spotify. Our daughter, Lilia, uses her Apple Family Music subscription, but it's also really a record vinyl aficionado. She loves music. She collects vinyls. So she has her little outlet for music. I think our son uses Apple Music too, but I'm the only one just I relinquished it to YouTube. But I love music, and I have it in the mix with other things, honestly. Audiobooks, a confluence of interviews, podcasting, and then music is certainly in the mix depending on my mood. There's a part of my process with animation, certain things I could do if I'm designing, if I'm drawing characters, no problem. I can listen to music. There's certain parts of my process where I can't listen to anything, because if I try to listen to somebody talking, or I try to listen to a song and enjoy it while I'm doing this task that requires like extreme concentration, I can't do it. And it's the worst part of my process. So if I'm timing out the animation on like an exposure sheet, a digital exposure sheet, or if I'm plotting out an animatic, really doing like laying the groundwork for my scene, I can't listen to anything, because if I try, it'll just fall by the wayside in seconds. The concentration is just the concentration required for those part of the process is just too much for me. I can't do both, but I can't wait. I'm racing through that part of the process, because when I'm actually keyframing and then doing the frame by frame animation, having already thought out the prior parts of the process, I could then free myself up to listen to music or listen to a podcast. So I can't wait to get through that. And then at the end of the process, when I have to lip sync, everything else has to go off. When I have to lip sync the animation to the audio, which is another painful part of the process, partially not only because it's, it could be monotonous, but also because I can't do anything to entertain myself during that process, which could be hours. So that's how music really works for me.
You make me feel bad. when I so I'll make the thumbnail and then I have to retranslate the timestamps to video.
Sure.
And that's when I have to pause the music. It takes me at most 20 minutes. So,
but it's painful.
And it feels like I'm suffering.
Yes.
But so the fact that you're stopping for hours, I really shouldn't complain.
Sometimes I'll put the lip sync off for like an extra day if I just like really need to listen to an album or really listen to something, something more aggressive like hip hop or something a little more ethereal like whatever shoegaze band I'm listening to, whatever. Like it depends on my mood.
Mm.
But thinking back to music, where it started for me was definitely, I got to credit my parents with that because they really they exposed me to music from an early age. And it's interesting to think back specifically because they weren't like leading me to water or showing me. I just saw how important music was to them. I observed that from a young age, that they would have their records on while they were cleaning the house or while they were making breakfast on a Saturday morning or just unwinding and laying on the living room couch and listening to an album, whether it was on their speakers or whether it was on headphones, how important music was to their day and them singing along. And back then it was Zeppelin and Supertramp and Fleetwood Mac, and my dad had Sabbath and my mom had Christopher Cross. Like they had, and of course the Beatles was in heavy rotation. They had their things that they individually loved and they collectively loved. And I paid attention to it. I saw how much it meant to them. And I remember as a little kid, man, I was probably crawling at this age. Part of my process, they had a floor to ceiling shelf of vinyl, really important epic record collection that I guess was probably the majority of my dad's. And I would just go over, and while the music was playing, I would pull down random albums and just fawn over the album covers. I would just gawk at the imagery on these big square things. And it was, they told a story or they haunted me, or I wondered what the explanation was behind this stuff, whether it was illustrated or a photo. Part of the process for me, and this probably speaks to me as a young budding artist at that time, right, was the visual. Like the record albums or the covers, the art was such a big part of it to me. I remember like specifically really being haunted by ones, Zeppelin's Houses of the Holy. Like I was like, what are these little kids, naked kids crawling over this giant pile of rocks or junk with tires, whatever it was. It was just so abstract and weird to me. I felt like, I remember having that feeling as a little kid of like, you don't understand this yet. But there's something here, and it's part of the explanation why they like it so much, and just trying to pull it apart and understand it until later on, probably in the mid 80s when I got my first boombox dual cassette. I think what was so interesting about that was my parents were pretty strict. I wasn't allowed to have video games in my room, no TV. We weren't allowed to have our own phone line. So getting the boombox, and back then it was cassettes, having your own music in your room was like the first independent thing where I could go do it on my own and just enjoy something in the privacy of my room without having to do it around the entire family. If I played a video game, it was in the living room. If I had a conversation with my friend, it was in the kitchen on the phone, right? It was the first time I was able to, you kind of go upstairs and seclude yourself and enjoy something. And it's, I guess for me, it was, in my generation, it was kind of the beginning of forming our identities and kind of forming our own voice around the stuff we responded to. I was laughing because I remembered my first like 20 cassette tapes. It was such an eclectic range of music. It was like Shaka Khan, Public Enemy, Def Leppard, Midnight Oil, the Sugar Cubes. Like it was so unapologetically innocent because it was just whatever you thought sounded good. It's like the Breeders and Big Daddy Kane and INXS and probably Dinosaur Jr. Like just like this dynamic range of stuff. It was like I liked all of it. I didn't have to feel like I needed to squeeze myself into a certain identity or a certain niche or clique back then. It was just like I just kind of dug everything. And then that kind of graduated to me until you guys were making me laugh with the portable music. At first for me it was the walk. I skipped over the Walkman, which Colin and I talked about recently. We went right to the Discman. I didn't have a Sony. I had like an Iowa. It was a relatively nice quality Discman. And then that graduated, of course, into the earlier iPods. And those are the things, that portable music was really what helped me or saved me through that lengthy, grueling commute from, between Philly and New York for work, along with the Game Boy Advance SP. Shout out to that. That really, that really saved me during 6-hour commute, 3 hours each way. I needed to have that stuff. The only other thing I was thinking about with music that really is such a discernible memory for me, and one that's so formative. Colin knows the story. When our Aunt Joni, she was relatively young. She was short of 30. She was moving to Hawaii to live from Long Island, and she was sort of going lean. She was giving stuff away, and she gave me her very expensive stereo system, which replaced my $90 boombox, which was a shot in the arm because my parents were not buying me a $1,500 stereo at that time. So that was perk number one. But what was really cool about that was she inadvertently left a Supremes cassette in one of the decks. And that's how I discovered Diana Ross and the Supremes, and vis-a-vis discovered Motown music, and later on Al Green and Marvin Gaye and all this other stuff. It opened up a whole world to me just because she left that Supremes. It was like a Supremes anthology in that stereo, and turned me on to a whole world of music that I really didn't know. I mean, I was listening to like Casey Kasem Top 40 at that point. So that was really, really cool. And I just fell in love with the Supremes. Are still like Diana Ross. I have such a crush on like late 60s era Diana Ross, like unbelievable. And that was part of the thing. And again, it was this accidental thing that had this huge effect on me. And the only other thing I'll say is that I realized I was growing up and coming full circle was probably around 15 years old, really, again, being like immersed in hip hop and rap music. And that was kind of, at that point, I was leaving everything else by the wayside and just really pursuing rap. And skate videos in the late 80s, early 90s were starting to really lean heavily on classic rock. For whatever reason, it became trendy in that world. And classic rock and vintage rock and early metal and the Beatles, all of that kind of stuff. Where I was starting to think all that stuff was really nerdy and annoying. Like I'd get in the car, my dad would play the Beatles and be like, pfft.
Dude, but my mom is the same way about the Beatles. She associates that as like my parents' music.
Still to this day?
Oh yeah. She doesn't hate them, but there's certain, like in particular the Beach Boys, she can't get into. So I wonder if there's a thing that bands and artists come back somewhat at a generational skip. And I don't know if that's just related to like a parent thing, because for me in 2010, when the Beatles Rock Band came out, it came out at the time when they were doing all those Beatles, the remasters.
I love that game.
And so it was huge for kids my age to be getting into the Beatles at that time. Whereas the Gen X crowd, I wonder, I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of Gen Xers that love the Beatles, but I wonder just if there's anything to that.
It is weird. I mean, that would, if that music hadn't popped up in skate videos, I might have still thought, oh, that stuff's super nerdy. But instead, we turned to, I had ignored my dad's record collection. I probably outgrew that by the time I was 7. Now I'm 15, 16, and I'm digging back into my dad's vinyls because these skate videos made it cool again. And not only that, we would listen to it in the car. We would dub tapes of Beatles anthologies and albums, specific albums, and things like Steve Miller. Like, we would have never turned to that kind of music or probably even discovered it. Our ears would have been completely turned off to that kind of stuff if skate videos didn't reintroduce us to those things. And it makes sense because the skate company owners at that point were probably closer to my parents' age, and they were the one. It wasn't the kids skating on video. It was the company owners putting those songs on and making it seem cool. So that was like a whole re-exposure to music that we had outgrown, which was kind of a cool memory to my dad's chagrin, because he would get so pissed off that I was going through his albums and he had kept these things pristine for years, and he didn't want me scratching them or necessarily, and I tried to be delicate with them, but, probably as a 16-year-old, not thinking in terms of like, my dad's had this album. It's like an original pressing, first edition. he's kept it pristine for 35 years. Now I'm digging through it to play a Steve Miller song, you know? And I think to this day, he really treasures those albums, and a lot of them are from, you know, he probably bought in the 60s and to the early to mid 70s. So they are sort of priceless. And if they're not worth a lot monetarily, they mean a lot in terms of his memory and his love for music. My dad was especially formative with music because even though he's one of the few people in my life who wasn't a musician per se, or definitely he didn't have an abundance of musical talent, or at least he didn't explore that for himself, but he did love music. He loved, even more so back then than TV and movies and other media and pop culture, he was a mark for music, specifically rock music, the great classic rock music. And he was really the one who exposed us to that, which was actually really, really cool. And that's never gone away. Beatles are still heavily in my rotation. That my parents were jazz hounds growing up, and that's what they showed us. So it really is interesting how they have such a mark on your taste and how you grow up and what's nostalgic. And I love what you said too, Dustin, about records and just the tactile functionality and interacting with them and having to, you're not just pressing a button or touching a screen. Mm-hmm. You're forced to interact. And I think that plays into physical media. I think of DVD. I think of collecting video games, new and old. It's still having albums and vinyl as part of that. It's still the best way to demonstrate our fandom for something, is to actually have it, to own it. That's a statement of, I really love this band. I really love this album. I really love this era of music. There's still probably no other way to express your enthusiasm for something than having it to hold. And I think that's why physical collecting is still a thing, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's I've gotten better about that, thinking about certain bands where I felt the need to own all the albums. Like, well, I don't really like this one as much. I don't listen to it, but I feel this desire to have this complete set for this band I like.
Makes sense.
But Dagan, you reminded me of, you're talking about going through your dad's records and him telling you to be careful or whatever, because you never know how people handle your stuff. And I remember that happening a few times. You let someone borrow a CD and it comes back with some scratches on it or something. And luckily now with Blu-rays and the 4K discs don't really seem to have the problem of them getting scratched at all. Even if they do get a few scratches, it's totally fine. But yeah. I remember there were certain CDs that we had that it's like, oh, you got to skip this song. If you don't, it's going to freeze. It's not going to work. You got to skip ahead. And so you just didn't know that one song on the album. And then you would maybe be with somebody, particularly with records. I can't remember who this was. I remember seeing someone get a record out. I was at their house and they just practically palmed it. They just gripped it and got their fingers all over the grooves. Oh. It's like, no, don't do that. Just think it. I'm like, you gotta, hold it with the fingertips and put it on. But yeah, it's that's the thing, dude. The convenience of listening to stuff on Spotify. I'm a Apple Music guy just because I have the plan that has everything in it. But it's been, I think for me, for the consumer, and Colin, this is what you were touching on, just so much better. The ability to go and explore and listen to whatever you want. I remember even, I guess this would have been really late era, but for certain CDs for bands, it's like, I'm pretty sure I like this. I heard this one song and I liked it, but I don't really know. And this is, $15 or something, maybe more than that, maybe $20. And you're taking a risk and then you get it and you just don't like it or whatever. Luckily for me though, dude, burning CDs for a friend, that was huge. The people were burning CDs left and right. It was just kind of a known thing that you got the giant stack and maybe you would burn some for your friends and it would eventually come back around. You would hope. Yes. Sometimes there's that one friend that would always ask you to burn a CD. He would never burn anything back. Maybe he didn't have it burning.
That's
you're
not
like,
cool.
It's
Get out of here, stinky.
Give and take,
It was a give and take. You're right.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. I'm old enough to realize, I remember thinking this as a kid. It seemed like CDs were a weird trade-off for cassettes because cassettes were inconvenient. You couldn't cue them up exactly. They took more labor, took longer to rewind to the beginning, but they seemed easier to take care of. And in some ways, oddly, even more portable, if not the same level of portability as a CD, right? CDs were flatter, but they were also bigger as far as mass went. I always thought that was really strange. I wonder how, do you guys have access to cassette tapes? And will they still work, or does that tape eventually just corrode?
There's like a collecting scene for it, so I think that
there's new ones being made.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Some bands are still doing it.
That's super interesting.
They will definitely degrade. I think that just by the nature, I mean, this is slightly different, but for my old job, a big part of it was transferring VHS, which is sort of similar in that it works on the same type of magnetic tape.
Yeah.
And those, just by the nature of existing, will get lower and lower quality and have more hiss and stuff like that. But I don't know. I'm wondering if you did have a perfectly preserved tape, maybe never opened, if it would still sound super fresh.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Tape does have a very specific sound.
It does.
Is really nice. You know, got that hiss at the beginning. You know, there's
something about it.
I didn't have many tapes in my time, but I remember listening to a few and having that warm sound is really nice.
Yeah, and you don't even realize it until the next thing comes along, unless you're comparing it retrospectively to vinyl. But yeah, I remember thinking, you think with every iteration, like, this is the best it could sound. Then CD comes out and it's like, oh, it can sound that much better. That, then you have the realization later on with digital perfecting everything in HD and everything's orally brilliant. And then the next thing comes. It's like, you always wonder where it's going to land next.
Yeah.
We've seen it all. We've seen it all. The only thing I never really was exposed to, even though they were around, were 8-tracks. I think by the time, at least to my best recollection, to my earliest memories, I think my parents were over 8-tracks by the time I remember listening to things in the car. That was the other thing, just listening to music in the car. And I'm so old that, it was radio. I mean, you could have a cassette in the car, yes, but it was radio and it was listening to whatever came on. Your best approximation was listening to the station with your taste of music. Otherwise, you would be beholden to what they played and whatever came on. And, that probably led to discovery. Probably led to listening to a lot of shit you didn't want to listen to, too. But it's so interesting to grow up in an era where it wasn't carte blanche. Like, you were beholden to what this jockey played, what the radio station played. And I remember all sorts. I remember really shitty music on the radio. And I remember radio stations that unapologetically played the same 4 mainstream songs over and over again because they wanted those ratings. Right. And now it's interesting.
What is it about I still have the radio on every once in a while in the car if I'm just too lazy to plug anything in. And when you hear one of your favorite songs on the radio, it's like it sounds better. This feeling of, we're all listening to this one song, or like you could easily play it anytime you want on your device or whatever. But when you hear it on the radio, it hits a little different,
It's a good point. Yeah. Is it a communal thing? It's like thousands of us are listening to this right now. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like a concert experience almost. Just in a smaller, bite-sized way. It's a great point.
All right, my friends. It's time to go. That's it for really this episode of Constellation. I was like, what show is this? We're recording so many shows lately.
They all blur together.
Dave, do you have any closing comments?
No, thank you. It was super fun. Thanks for having me. Thanks for talking with us. See you soon. I'll see you really soon. I'll see you in a couple of days. Indeed. Our sister's getting married, so we'll all be gathering for that. Dustin, closing comments. I think I'm going to take my mom to see the Mario movie tonight. She's in town for a few days. She had a couple appointments here in town. So I don't know. Maybe we'll go do that. But no, just nice chat to be had with all. Yeah, definitely. Nice. Thank you for gathering. And thank you to Gene as well again. Sorry we had to say goodbye to him early, but we were having some technical issues
we had to deal with as well as pushing us back. So it kind of interfered with his schedule. So thank you for your patience on that out there. And otherwise, thank you for your love, kindness, and support of all things Last Stand Media on Patreon and free feeds. You know the drill. We couldn't do it without you. We'll see you next time. Until then, goodbye.
See ya.
Constellation is a product of Last Stand Media and Colin's Last Stand LLC and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show was conceived by and is directed and hosted by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-host is my brother, Dagan Moriarty. The show is produced by Last Stand's executive producer, Dustin Furman, and is edited by associate producer, Ben Smith. All Last Stand theme music is by Ramon Narvaez, and all of our graphics and logos are by Dagan Moriarty. As you know, all of Last Stand Media's podcasts, including Constellation, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest support tier, and we're infinitely grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor.